Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Douglas Conservation Commission meeting for Monday, June 15th, 2020. A remote Zoom meeting. It will be broadcasted on YouTube, and the meeting instructions are found on the website. So first order is roll call vote for the board members. So Tracy Sharkey, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungem, aye.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Okay. And we can admit Eric is arriving now. And roll call, Eric, for the attendance of the board.
Eric Harris.
Okay.
Here.
All right. Very good. So the first item on the agenda is going to be 7 p.m. Notice of intent, public hearing continued, Orange Street. Stephen and Lynn Donatelli. Steve, do you want to update us?
Well, we were waiting. This is the wetland crossing. We've been waiting probably a good month and a half for them to update the plans. We got some last week on the wetland crossings. And hang on, oh, Steve, let me admit him right here. The owner is.
Okay. So we do have updated plans that are
We have
on the
right. I haven't gone through them in detail because they just came in this week. So I was hoping that well, Steve maybe gave an overview of the changes he made, and it might be good for the commission to go out there and take a look. Let me see if I can bring the plans up.
Okay, so we'll screen share and then pass it over to the applicant.
Steve, are you there? For Orange Street? Do you know if he's in, Tracy?
He was loading up.
Doing the dishes.
Yeah, he's trying to.
The other Steve is kind of loud.
He's connecting to audio very
Am I loud?
soon.
Let me turn my mic down.
Steve and Sue, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here.
can
Steve.
I muted them.
Yeah, there you go. Now it's quiet.
Hello? All right, Steve Donatelli, you there?
It says it connecting to audio. So he may be coming in on the phone.
Hello.
Steve Donatelli, is that you?
Ready?
Steve?
Yes, it is.
All right,
Yes, Steve. How you doing?
good. All right, so you're first up in the queue. So just maybe give an update. It's been probably two or three meetings. The commission had a bunch of comments that were sent to your board. I think the plans came to the commission last week, so I haven't gone into detail of the changes. One of the major issues, I think, is that it was the culvert itself.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can zoom in. Before you didn't have the stream bank. The stream, if you can see it, wasn't marked out. And anytime you have a stream crossing, you have to have what the DEP says an open ratio. So you have to have pretty much a three-sided culvert that's sized enough in order to let wildlife and habitat and bank flow on either side of the stream crossing to exist. And so we're looking for those calculations, the bank to be to looked at. There was issues with this runoff that was the swale that was coming down the side. And and then basically there was information on the profile, of the crossing itself, the height, the bank of the crossing. The old plan was more of a septic plan, and we're looking
Correct.
more for crossing information. So that's a little bit about just a executive summary. You want to give a little bit more update on what you guys did?
Yes, I prior had I think it was 2 15-inch pipes, RCP pipes going out. Right now I have I've designed a 3-sided culvert, a box culvert, a 4-foot by 2-foot by 16-foot long. Actually, Margaret Bacon designed that for me on that, very similar to the one she had on Southeast Main Street. I know you mentioned, Steve, you like that one. So that's what she had sized, and I think I submitted her calculations.
Right.
What she had. So that's her design. Let's see, we had I added I know for the swale coming down the slope, there are now check dams added to the slope, which weren't there before. Had an open swale. I put some check dams along the swale and shortened it up so it's not discharging at the wetland anymore. It's up gradient from the wetlands. I think it's up gradient about 25 feet. I stopped it short of the wetlands. Check dams along the. I did resize. The other thing that was mentioned at the other meeting was that the size of the replication area and the species that were in it were left out, but that is now 150% of the replication area, of the disturbed area that's at the crossing. And the species are marked on sheet 2 of our of the design plan. Yes, that right there, correct. And they let's see. Those are the species of the plants that were going to be placed in the replication area, and they're labeled where they would go in the replication area. So trying to think what else might have been. I mean, it added a lot more detail on the second sheet, which wasn't on the original design plan. A lot of the notes, the wetland replication area, construction sequence, the driveway crossing at the culvert are there. Right, yeah, right in there. There's one at the wetland crossing and one in the upland location, so that the driveway crossing.
So Steve, you went through your checklist.
Yes.
Oh, and the other Steve's,
Yep.
you went through your checklist.
I originally went through the checklist. I haven't done it the second time.
Okay.
Because the plan came in last week.
Okay.
But
The items look like they've been addressed
they have.
on this plan.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think I just saw, I omitted Margaret Bacon. So she's I think she's here for another project, but you can certainly, if she had anything, I think she did the delineation, the replication area. And I think the design, I talked to her about the project. The design is similar to the one that's on is it Southeast Main, the Pike? Yeah, the Pike, which came out very well.
Okay. So board, you've seen the Steve's NOI comments, and I think, hold on one second. Let me just get back to you guys. Did someone have a comment on that? Board, did somebody have a question on this? Here we go. So we've got the checklist. Looks like the majority of the items were addressed. We do not have a DEP number. And does the board want to schedule a site walk for this
Yeah.
project?
I would like to do that, and I had a quick question. I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. I thought that the other site, the box culvert, was much larger. Now, obviously, the engineering could have just led to this box culvert doesn't need to be as big, but this, to me, this seems small in comparison to other plans we've seen for a culvert.
It is smaller. Margaret Bacon designed that and sized it.
So it's just,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a smaller body of water than what we've been seeing.
Yeah,
Okay,
a smaller
Does
drainage
the-
area.
all right. Yeah, I would do a site walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Board,
yeah.
before we schedule that, does anyone else have any questions or comments on what you've seen as far as the plan?
Well,
And
yeah, so I think, and Margaret's here too, but I think when I'm talking to her, I picked up on the same thing, is that when you go out to the site, there's an existing house on the left that has, there's an impoundment. Let me see if I can go back to the plans. Hang on one second.
To the left or the right?
All right, so where are we? Yeah, up on top here. So we come in and there's a house here, and there's actually, there's a little stone wall here that created an old pond. There's a pond. And I think the way it was designed, let me see if I can zoom in. There's almost an impoundment right here of water. And so this is where it spills over on an old stone wall and comes through. And I think that might be the reason why it's not as wide as the one on Southeast Main, because that one the one on Southeast Main was almost like it was really a defined culvert. It had it was weaving in between a lot of like field stones and rocks, and she made it purposely wider just to capture as much bank as possible.
Yeah.
But we can go out there and take a look. And then Steve, any reason why you're not getting a DEP number?
I spoke with someone up there a little over a week ago, and they said I should have them within a week. I don't know why it's not there yet, but they told me I would have them by today's meeting. So I do not know why.
Where on,
Originally, I don't know why it took so long.
where
I
on
don't know, I
Orange
have a
Street
revised
is this?
plan.
what are,
Where on Orange Street is this?
This
See
is
if I can-
down between Perry Street Exchange and the Rhode Island line. It's down
There's
toward
a
Rhode
link.
Island.
Yeah, let me see if I can bring it up on the screen.
On page 1 of the drawing package in the Google Drive folder, the same one that Steve was showing us, there is a locust map on the right, kind of halfway down in a circle, and it shows where it is in relation to Orange, Perry, and the Burrillville line.
Okay,
Does everybody see the screen?
Yep.
All right, let me zoom into Orange Street. So this is South Street, so if you come down South Street and then go on to Perry, and then come down to Orange, this is Orange, and the lot is right here, right next to this house.
Is that? Yeah,
So
that's
it's-
right next to that.
next to 110.
no,
That's
try one more time.
There you go.
It's in
That's it
between
right
114 and 1618.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
So there's only one even number left.
116, yeah.
116 is gonna do it.
Yeah, if you've never been down Orange Street, sometimes it's hard to get to it,
Okay,
but that's it. If you see the town line, you've gone too far.
okay.
And then, Steve, can you put some, maybe, I don't know, color flagging off the street? So where the driveway would be, so, or so they could, or some stakes where the crossing is gonna be so they can find it?
Yes. I have some stakes at the crossing, but I'll put some stakes out at the road where the driveway is coming in.
Where the driveways, so they can kind of, once they can find that, because you can drive right by it.
Yes. There's a
Okay.
log home directly across the street.
Right.
So
Okay, so board, what are we thinking for a day and time? Thinking a Saturday?
Yeah, probably.
Saturday?
Like the 20th
Yeah.
Sure.
at 10, or do you want to
Yeah.
go at your leisure?
10 is not good for me.
Okay, what time?
I would personally prefer the afternoon.
Okay. Board, do we have a preference? Mark?
I don't have a preference. That's fine.
Okay, Mike?
That's fine.
Eric?
The afternoon might work. I might have to work that day, so.
Okay. Art?
Anytime works for me.
Okay. Katie Grace, you want to pick a time then? You're thinking
Well,
like
we're-
1 or 2?
Yeah, no, that'd be fine.
Which one?
What-
1?
Yes, 1.
Okay. All right. And everything's flagged out there and staked, or just flagged? Steve?
there are center line stakes in the driveway, I believe 75 feet on each side of the crossing.
Okay.
For the driveway, 25 feet. And the ends of, 2 center ends of the culvert are staked.
Oh, I noticed on the plans that the bank,
And
you
an
know,
application there.
right, I noticed on the plans that the stream with the bank, there's no bank flags, that you guys surveyed that in?
The bank, yes, that was located with survey.
So if we could just make sure that the checklist has been gone through for the next meeting.
Yeah,
Steve, did you see that checklist?
Okay. I don't believe I did.
Okay. Steve, could you email that to the applicant?
I will.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I didn't see it on the plan. Is there a cross section of the crossing vertical? I mean, not vertical, perpendicular to the crossing itself? I saw a BB section, but is there an AA that is perpendicular?
Second page, did you look at?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring it up.
Or is there a detail for the crossing?
Yeah.
There is. It's on page 2.
Page 2,
So if you got the Google Drive open, page 1 and page 2 are two separate files. Open the page 2, and there's a detail for the box culvert.
Okay,
It's in the center, top center.
yeah. I can't do
Mine's
two
one
things at
document.
once. so-
Oh,
Right here, so here's the,
thank
Is
you,
this on-
Steve.
here's the cross section.
and then below that also, keep on going down. Going down under the straw hay bale, right there.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, anyone else have a question or comment before I move to the audience?
I was just gonna say, I like the native vegetation that's gonna be put in the replication area.
Okay. That's noted. Good job. Anyone else? Mike? No?
No?
Okay. Anyone in the audience have any questions or concerns in regards to this agenda item 116 orange? Not seeing any, so I'll entertain a motion to continue to July 13th
So moved.
Second.
at 7 p.m.
July 13th at 7.
as a friendly little amendment on that. Trying to get back to you. And all those in favor on a roll call.
Art Monmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Munjamai.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we'll see you on the June 20th at 1 p.m.
Good.
And let's try to get a DEP number on that by the 13th. Right, Steve?
Well, yeah, they need it before we
Steve,
can
yes.
close.
Agent Steve and Steve, applicant. So that we can wrap this up. Oh, he's gone. Okay,
Just to confirm, we set the site walk for 1 p.m. Saturday, the 20th.
correct.
Thank you.
Alrighty, the next item on the agenda is going to be the public hearing continued amended notice of intent, 49 and 53 Woodland Road,
They
Deer
have it.
Crossing.
They have asked for continuance.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion
So moved.
to July 13th at 7 p.m.
Agreed. Yes, that one.
Okay, made
Second.
by Katie Grace, seconded by Art. All those in favor, roll call, please.
Mike Greco, aye.
Art Monmany, aye.
A.G. Dudley, aye.
Mark Mungem, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is going to be the 7 p.m. public hearing continued, 45 Oak Street, BWC WHITIN Reservoir, Blue Wave Solar. Okay, Steve, do you want to start off? We're waiting for a couple items.
Yep. So the items, it was requested at the start of the remote meeting era that the Conservation Commission send the stormwater review out for third-party review. It was a request by the town engineer, and so and it was requested that the commission take the lead on soliciting proposals, since the planning board wasn't meeting at the time, and that's what we did. So we sent 4 out, we got 1 back, and then our corporation was chosen in conjunction with the planning board. I guess they're doing meetings again. And so we sent the review out. We actually got a draft. I think might have got a draft letter early today. And I think that might have been a final one today that's going to be sent out to the, I haven't gotten any, I sent it to the Jeff Murphy and the town engineer to review.
Okay.
And I can bring it up now if you want, to see if the commission wants to go through it, or I can send it out to commission. But I think right now, Jeff might have an update on the process, on what he's doing with the planning board regarding the stormwater.
Sure. Jeff Murphy here with Beals and Thomas, representing the applicant, BWC WHITIN Reservoir LLC. So Steve, I guess the letter that you were referring to from PAR, I received a draft copy of their review letter, so I wasn't sure if that was actually the final letter. If so, we haven't seen the final letter.
I think that's why I think like within the last hour, I might have received something, Joe. From Joe.
Joe at PAR.
Steve, attaches the final review letter, no additional comments, and only a minor edit from our draft letter. So that was a few hours ago.
Okay, so yeah, we haven't seen that yet,
Right.
but certainly, the process would be that we would, respond, provide written responses to the peer reviewers' comments on stormwater, and then we would, issue that letter with responses and any, plan changes that may come out of that. Obviously going back and forth with the peer reviewer until all of the comments are resolved. At which point, we would consider the stormwater review to be concluded. And, I know this is a concurrent review of stormwater being done for planning, for the site plan review process, as well as for the notice of intent. So, once that's addressed, we would certainly consider everything resolved. Obviously, Bill Cundiff would provide his final kind of blessing on that, having seen that the comments had been addressed in the letter. So that's kind of how we envision this, process.
So, right, so for the commission, so the, originally, the planning board usually takes the precedent on stormwater review, and I think they actually started it, and they were halfway through it when they stopped reviewing the stormwater and sent it out for third-party review. So there's very little work within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, but which triggered the entire site to be under the notice of intent stormwater review. There's some grading and whatnot. So right now, I think planning board is, the commission usually follows the planning board's lead with the advice of the town engineer that reviews it also. I know there's a peer review engineer reviewing it. So I'm speculating in conjunction with the peer review and the town engineer that the planning board will finalize the review that they started originally. And then that typically that site plan review has to get approved first prior to the commission approving the notice of intent. So if the site plan review is all set and approved by planning board and we get authorization that they're satisfied, the town engineer is satisfied that the work was in concordance with the town's drainage, then I think we should probably have that by next meeting.
Yeah, just to kind of build on what Steve said. So I know he was saying that typically that's how it would go, where the planning board would have that resolved for us. But ideally, we want to have all these comments addressed before the July meeting. And, if as long as Bill says ahead of time that he's good, provides, something in writing saying he's okay with the stormwater review, all comments had been addressed. We just want to be able to have that not hold up things for the next meeting, being as the planning board meets a couple days after the Conservation Commission. So ideally, that would be kind of the most streamlined path forward for us on this.
I think my recommendation, I mean, we can first, I'll talk procedurally, but let's see if Chase, I'll leave it up to you, see if there's any comments and questions regarding the project.
You're saying if we have those peer review comments addressed and Bill says there's no further changes to the plans, you're looking for an order 2 days before the planning board issues their decision. Is that where you're trying to lead to, Jeff?
Well, just so we wouldn't have to, say we would come in and, at that point, if we were to try to close the public hearing, we understand there's some risk there, but we would think that if Bill had said, okay, he's 100% good with the stormwater review at that point, then we don't want to have to wait another month to come back again. So we're just trying to.
Yeah, so what I'd recommend in something like that is that we ultimately, when we continue this to the 13th, that the board, because I think we need to wait till planning board signs off. That
It's only 2 more weeks anyway, it'd be August 3rd.
August 3rd, or we can have just a special meeting on July 20th, have a Zoom meeting July 20th, just to handle, technically planning board would sign off on the 15th. And we could just have a 1-item meeting on the 20th.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to that.
There's 2 items, actually.
What's that?
You're gonna do that. There's gonna be at least 2 items, similar situation. I think that we continue to the July 13th, and if we can get confirmation that the plans are not going to be revised, it's at the applicant's discretion to request us to issue the order, and then, I mean, there should be confirmation that your plans are the final plan set.
Yeah, I think we'll have to kind of wait and see how it plays out, but I think that would be kind of an ideal scenario. But again, like if Steve said, if there is a way to have a meeting not long after that one, if that ends up
We have one like Art said, there's one 2 weeks later.
Right, yeah, it would essentially save them 7 days or so. So,
All right. So I guess. yeah.
I would say that the goal would be to have a confirmation that the plan set will be the plan set as of July 13th. That's what, I mean, that's really all the board would want to know, that the plans are not going to be changing.
Right.
If there's some conditions that the planning board would like to put into the project, that's not under our purview. And it's such a small amount. If the stormwater comments are in line with what Bill says that are correct, I don't see the plans changing.
Okay.
Board, what are you thinking? We've had this project since what, February?
Yeah, I don't think 7 days one way or the other. I mean, unless you really think it's going to make or break this. I'd hate to do something out of the ordinary for a few days.
Yeah, I just think it's better procedurally making sure site plan is signed off on.
Yeah, I don't think we should set a precedent like that. I think the planning board should finish what they're doing first, like they usually do.
I don't think we're precedent setting. It's the board's flavor. So that's number one. So I think we wait till July 13th to see what the feedback is. They just got the final response letter. So if there's something that's, substantial in that letter that needs to be changed, then that would change my opinion. But I think we've seen this plan, and it's, besides the stormwater aspect, it's very minimal on our jurisdictional areas, and those really haven't changed. And he's done everything we've asked for with the fencing and the relocating of the swales and the detention basins. And so I think we just wait to see the feedback from the town engineer on the review letter.
So Tracy, there is something I actually did want to discuss with the commission, an additional change that came up. So we had reissued these plans last week. We had received Bill's site response to our initial response letter for the site plan review, and we issued the plans again last week. They're dated June 11th, and one of the changes that we made on those plans was with respect to the fencing. We had originally been proposing the 7-foot high chain link fencing, but as part of the dual use goal of this project, to have it be, the agricultural use along with the solar generating use, we changed it from the chain link fence to a 6.5-foot farm fence that has basically wooden cedar posts as well as kind of a wire mesh, as well as some electrified cables on the interior side, because they would like to have, some livestock in here. So if you were to go to sheet, I think it's C601, Steve, which I think is sheet page 13 of that PDF, I had added some revised details to the plan. So again, you may recall the fencing for the project generally goes through portions of the outer, 50 to 100-foot buffer zone for basin off-grading slopes. That's kind of the extent of the fencing that's in the buffer zones. So we drew up this detail here, again, having like 7-foot high, cedar posts, like 5-foot inch diameter cedar posts. It's set in the ground, and then this kind of wire cage on the outside, and then the electrified wires being on the inside, and those openings would be, I'm guessing, about 3 to 4 inch openings in the fencing, so there would be a little bit of room there. I know we had initially kind of talked about the wildlife gap on the chain link fence. But in talking with the applicant and their goals about I guess, trying to also keep, I guess, potentially like, foxes or coyotes getting inside this thing. I think they were a little bit concerned about leaving that big of a gap under the fence. So we are thinking this would be down closer to the ground, but with the bigger openings in the fence versus a chain link, which it has a very small opening, that it might still be able to accommodate, that wildlife movement we were originally hoping to have there in terms of smaller critters. So I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
So
We do.
there's an 8-inch marker line, so you're not lifting this off the ground anymore.
That is my understanding. Is so that's it's.
I
right now
can't
it's-
really,
yeah.
Steve, could you zoom into the detail, please?
Yeah, that 8-inch line is to the lowest wire. So there's going to be 4 wires. There's one that's like up on top of the fence, and then there's 3 like lower ones, one at 8 inches, one at 22, and one at 34.
Yeah, I see
So-
the hot wires. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the actual fencing would be going down closer to the ground on this detail.
Yeah, we'll have to look at, doesn't DEP have guidelines on this?
I thought they did.
Hmm, for wildlife habitat
The
movement?
flea market fencing, the solar farm,
Right,
Steve.
yeah,
We saw this the first time when there was the riverfront area,
yep.
and we did have
Well,
that.
Well, Brandy recommended a lot of that because she was on the board of the natural heritage. But
Yeah.
I think DEP subsequently from that might have come out with guidelines also. I'll have to take a look.
It's also in the Blackstone Valley Watershed Association publication on the topic. At least that's where I saw the 8 inches. So the understanding that if this is dual use and this is agriculture and this is the type of fence you want for the agricultural area, maybe that's a consideration. But then I was initially asking specifically about the area in the wetlands. I mean, clearly not in the wetlands, in the buffer zone, the jurisdictional area. I wouldn't expect you to be doing agricultural activities within the jurisdictional area. Maybe the solution is 2 different types of fencing, one for the jurisdictional area where I have wetland species that might need an 8-inch passage, and maybe there's this type of fencing in the agricultural areas. Because I understand why you want this for dual use, but our expectation is, I don't have the map. I can pull up the map again. But it's a small area that this board is concerned about, wetland wildlife. I'm not particularly, for an example, the turtles in the wetlands wildlife species aren't probably particularly interested in your agricultural area. They're interested in accessing the wetland areas. So again, maybe the solution is 2 different types of fencing.
Jeff, could you look into that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking about this in terms of kind of maybe having, there may be a need to have a fence that's kind of more like up closer to where they're going to be having this agricultural use, because right now the fencing primarily runs on those basin off-grading slopes and down there. So like Katie Grease had suggested, maybe there is an option where we look at 2 different types of fencing where we do something different in the buffer zone, but also have that kind of, level of protection that we're looking for higher up or away from there.
Yep.
That's something we can talk to the applicant and see what suggestions they have to address that.
Hey everyone, this is Matt at BLUEWAVE. I can also address a piece of that now, just to talk about sort of where our desire for this is coming from. Is just that the agricultural operation will be putting in sort of like temporary fencing around where you see the access road, because the access road's where the actual operation will be done. And we're not, you're correct in saying, yeah, we won't be using like that basin area or areas that really encroach upon the wetland for any agricultural purposes. But we would like to just keep the security aspect of it intact, because then if we do raise up a portion off the ground and that does become a place for predators to enter, then we would need to have an entirely separate agricultural fence to keep them out all along the interior. And it just becomes a lot of extra material at that point, just to provide that 6-inch gap over at one area. Because then it's just sort of an inlet point that sort of negates the fencing's purpose for the rest of the array.
Would you be able to provide some documentation kind of for your position on not lifting the fencing?
Just a quick suggestion.
Yes,
Is there a reason, what's the purpose of the fence?
livestock.
No, in general. I mean, they have it around, you're fencing, are you protecting the detention ponds, or are you protecting the solar arrays? Do you need it that far out? Can you just move the entire fence so you don't need to protect the detention ponds from wildlife, but just start it so it goes around the access road?
Yeah, that's more for operations and maintenance, just so that you have that contiguous area with which you can have access to.
Jeff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, would it be a possibility to
I mean,
have
does,
the fence be, you know, between like where the basin is and the access road, and then have like gates so that you could access the lower outlet areas for maintenance? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we could look at shifting that.
I mean, I don't know what the commission feels about that, but you know, when you have the fence, when it's down on the down slopes, it's gonna just get overgrown anyways, and you're gonna be weed whacking and maintaining that area, where if they brought it up into the access road, just a suggestion.
You're talking about not fencing in the detention areas?
No,
I don't know if that's a safety.
That's the thing. There's different fences for different reasons, and I get it that you want to fence around the project for the liability of the project, but I mean that fence can have a gap underneath it, right?
Yeah, so you could do a double set of fence, even though Matt was saying that he didn't want to do that, but you could, if you need the security and the safety, you could do the lifted fence around the detention ponds.
so what they're saying is that they don't want coyotes climbing underneath the space by the detention ponds and wreaking havoc through the solar array. So they would have to set up a second fence around the access road to totally enclose the solar array from large animals. Is that correct?
That's correct. And yeah, at that point, I guess all we'd be buying with having the fence raised up on the other side of the basins, but then to have a non-raised up fence, you know, 100 feet interior of that, you're buying that extra access 100 feet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with the guidelines, the wildlife guidelines. I'd like to see if there's what they have to say. Did you take a look at, the applicant take a look at those at all?
Our understanding was just that the spacing of the wire gauge would allow for the small animals. That was really more of the intent of that gap.
Could you send something along to Steve?
Yeah, sure thing.
So if that's the case, if this type of fencing is approved, then I think I would be open to the different style fencing. I just don't know if it is or not. Katie Grace, did you read those regulations?
Yeah, I mean, mine is based on the Blackstone watershed, and the understanding is that, you know, you're trying to allow passage of a critter that may be as many as 8 inches in diameter.
Okay. And what was that guide?
I'm talking about the, I don't know, the Blackstone Valley Watershed Association pointed it out to me, but I think
Corridor?
yes, Blackstone Valley Heritage Corridor. I'll find the title of the document. I know I've referenced it before. I used to carry a hard copy to meetings, but now I don't have it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to seeing any documentation, but yeah, our expectation was always to have it lifted for the movement of the critters. Jeff?
Yeah,
Matt?
we can definitely look into that and see what the if we have documentation there, what might be able to be done there, or if we may have to explore alternative routing of a portion of the fencing. So we'll look into that.
Okay. Yeah, if you could provide us with the information sooner than later so that we can review it so we're ready for the next meeting. Any other changes that you wanted to mention?
I don't believe so. I think the only other changes were all kind of outside of the commission's jurisdiction. It was mostly just related to site plan review comments. But
Okay.
I know we did shift one. I think I mentioned this at maybe one of the earlier meetings, an infiltration basin 3, which was like the southernmost basin, which again is outside buffer zone. We had shifted that emergency spillway kind of all the way as far south as it could go. Yeah, so you see it kind of, oh, you had it up, Steve, on that plan there. And the upper kind of, you just had it up on that last sheet.
Oh, hang on.
The upper right corner of that sheet, not this one, the next one down.
Slow.
Yeah, it just take, oh, there it is. So see where it says Sutton Douglas? That's so just to the right of that, you see that? Yep, that's the spillway. So that's the outlet there you're looking at, flared end 9. That's our outlet control structure. And then just next to it, that big rectangle on the left, yep, that's the emergency spillway. So we had shifted that all the way to the south to make sure that any flow that did come out of that spillway, which would be flows in excess, of a 100-year storm, because it's designed that even in a 100-year storm event, which is like 7 inches of rain in 24 hours, that's still not going to have any water coming out of it. But in the event it does have water coming out, we want to make sure that that water is going to flow clear of the abutter's house and property there. So they have, we've moved it there so to make sure it's going to be well clear of where their house is.
Okay.
So,
Board, do you have any questions?
I have one question. I had asked previously about the amount of imported fill to the site.
yes.
I wasn't sure where you stood on that and wanted to know if you had a number.
Yeah, so we did run an earthwork analysis, and based on the initial design we had, and it was a pretty significant number in terms of the amount of fill required to build up these berms as a result of the site soil conditions. And we basically had to design all these basins as, basically being at or just above existing grades. So these berms are entirely constructed of fill, which means that we have to bring a lot of material in to do that. So in order to reduce the amount of import, we actually changed the grading on top of the site here. So I think if you scroll down, Steve, you'll see that we added some grading on top of the hill. You'll see those kind of oval contour shapes there.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of planed off the top of that hill to generate material that they can build the stormwater basin berms out of. So I think it was in the kind of ballpark of about 20,000 yards of material that's going to be required to build these berms. So that was, we should be able to gain a good amount of material from kind of shaving the top of that hill down flatter and being able to generate that. So we have to reduce material import to try to balance out the site.
Jeff, are one of these sheets have the construction sequence plan on it?
Yeah, so that should be on, I think it's sheet number. 7 of the PDF. So it'll be C301. So I added all those notes that we talked about in one of our early meetings to have a construction sequencing.
What sheet was that?
You're on it right now, Steve. C301, C-301. So in that lower right corner. So we added all the kind of sequencing notes that the commission likes to see to that sheet in the lower corner there. So it basically says that, you know, they're going to need to build the stormwater basins first because we want those to be in place before they kind of, you know, start doing full site grading. You know. So we want to kind of just go through that. You know, they're going to have the erosion and sedimentation control barriers installed, you know, first and foremost. Those will be reviewed, you know, by you, Steve, before any construction begins. There'll be a pre-construction meeting with the applicant. So once everything's been approved, they'll be able to start doing site clearing operations. And then they'll establish their temporary crushed stone tracking pad at the edge of the site to make sure that they're not tracking any sediment onto the street. And then they'll start kind of the, you know, clearing, grubbing of stumps, and then they'll start kind of doing the bulk earthwork for the site. So they're going to have to go in and they're going to start prepping those areas for the stormwater basins. So they're going to actually have to generate some material off the top of the hill first. So there'll be some movement of earth to kind of access that material. And then they're going to have to kind of truck that around to build up these basin berms so that they can get those built. And they'll build the basins, grade in the swales, and then they'll prioritize hydro seeding of the site early on of those, you know, swales and stormwater features, because we want those to be getting grass on them as soon as possible to make sure that that is going to be able to take runoff from the site. And then once those features are in place, then they can start kind of working on the interior of the array, making sure everything is kind of smoothed out. You know, the existing grades are such that they shouldn't really have to do much actual grading within the array footprint, because there's about 10 acres of existing open grass fields there, and there's just kind of like wooded hedgerows between them, so they shouldn't have too much clearing to do in those areas. But then there is some additional tree clearing, mostly to the south of those existing fields and a bit to the east.
So some of the big concerns is during construction and while they're grading. So are they just going to grade the top of that area? Like, so this is the area of the first detention pond that's closest to Oak Street. Are they going to concentrate on completing this first before they finish any other work on the site? Is there going to be, I mean, as they're constructing this,
Yep.
during, you know, this, you know, the duration could take a month or two to construct the pond.
Yep.
What stormwater prevention, what's preventing any runoff on heavy rains from protecting Oak Street and the neighbors and the drainage down gradient from Oak Street during the construction of this pond?
Yep. So, you know, obviously the first line of defense, they're going to have the perimeter control. So the silt fence and straw bales, the ECB line there at the edge of your plan will be the down gradient kind of last line of defense. And then we're proposing on the hill there, we can see those dark dashed lines just above the basin. We're going to suggest that we're going to have that the contractor is going to use stump grindings to, those work really well in kind of slowing down stormwater as it comes off of a site. So we're going to propose these stump grinding berms. So we're going to have them spread it out linearly across the slope. And what that's going to do is it's going to provide, you know, kind of speed checks, and it's going to slow down and filter that runoff that's coming off of the site while they're working on building up that berm, which is then going to act as, you know, a temporary sediment basin until they can get it fully graded and established. So the contractor is going to have to be very vigilant in monitoring that area and that portion of erosion controls. And again, they're probably going to want to use the stump grindings down there to make sure that that area is very protected.
And so what's going on with this area off of Oak Street, which is in the jurisdiction of the commission? Is this something that was added or changed or?
Nope, that's been there pretty much since the beginning. So that's another infiltration basin. So that, you know, we're kind of very on the fringe of the buffer zone there. You can see kind of on the easterly side of the road, we've got a riprap swale proposed there. We've also got part of that basin berm that hooks around is in a outer portion of the 100-foot buffer for an off-site wetland. That basin has kind of been the same as designed since very much the beginning. And that's taking all the runoff from our access road. And
So,
yep.
So is there a note that says this, of all the things that's gonna be constructed first before you even do the access road, is this gonna be constructed, you know, as a temporary detention pond or basin? So as you're constructing the steep hill and it gets all muddy,
Yep.
if this isn't built, where's all this gonna go during construction before the ponds are built? So you would think that kind of like you did on the solar on West Street, you had some temporary ones that were built in order to catch the access road runoff during construction.
So
Is
I
that in-
envision, so I envision that's going to be much the same process. They're going to start, you know, out at Oak Street, and then they're going to kind of build their road in. I mean, fortunately, there's already an existing road for a portion of this, but they're going to basically be improving that road, making it more resilient for truck traffic and things. So they are going to have to prioritize building that first basin, doing those road improvements so that everything is kind of in place concurrent, you know, as they kind of work their way in. And once they get that established, that area established, then they can kind of go up top and start working. So it'll be a progression.
Right. So I don't see that detailed, that sequence detailed, like saying the lower part, you know, just what you talked about, progressing from Oak Street up and making sure this area is protected. And then this is constructed first in the plans. I mean, I'm not the PEs, so I'm not a PE. So, you know, I'd leave that up to the review of the stormwater, but sometimes the construction of it is critical just because it could, you know, who knows how long it's going to take them. And and if this is 100% complete and it's collecting all this runoff during the storm events, if it's not there, then you're fighting this hill the entire time while you're constructing everything else. So,
yeah, I mean, our notes our sequencing notes were a little more generic in just saying, you know, after the erosion controls are in, we're establishing the temporary tracking pad, and then we're saying commencing with the clearing and grubbing. So they have to clear a little bit of a corridor to get in there, and then they're going to have to do some earth moving and importing to build up that basin berm. So we just said grade out proposed infiltration basins and swales, but we didn't necessarily say like do this one first, do that. We didn't necessarily prescribe a specific order, but we could add a clarification for basin one.
I mean, I leave that up to the commission, but it seemed to work on the other solar farms that the ponds and the basins that were closest to the resource areas were done, but this is more closest to Oak Street, which is helping protecting everything down gradient from this area. Because I know in the other ones, it was pretty much, at least on West Street, that you couldn't do anything until the crossing was in and the ponds were complete.
Right, on that one, there weren't any BMPs until you got across the wetlands. So you had to build the bridge first, then they could go across, then they would grade it they roughed in the road, they got the road built, then they built the basins, and went from there.
Right.
Worked their way in, basically.
That's right.
Yep. So I envision a very similar strategy and approach being.
Yeah, I mean, if you can make that a little bit more specific, I think that we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with Steve. The sequence plan needs to be much more defined with as much disturbance area as there is on this site. And just to go back, I had asked a question about the amount of imported fill, and Jeff, you had started to say how much it was. You said there was 20,000 on the draft plan, then you decided to cut the top of the hill. But I didn't catch where you said how much the imported fill was changed. You said it was changed substantially, but I didn't hear what the quantity was.
Yeah, so there are going to be a there is a certain amount of import volume. And again, I apologize, I don't have the notes in front of me of the specific numbers, but there is a pretty significant amount of import from offsite for the gravel roads themselves.
Yep.
Because that material isn't going to be able to become generated from on-site. The soils are not very good on this site, unfortunately. So I think it's something in the neighborhood of like 7,000 to 10,000 yards of gravel that's going to have to come in regardless. But then in order to kind of balance out that, like, you know, whatever, it was about 20,000 yards, we said, okay, well, if we cut the top of the hill down, then that's material we can just source from right on the site, because we obviously want to reduce the amount of import for the project overall for costs and efficiency purposes. So that was attempting to offset the fill required for the basin berms. So
Sure.
Yep.
So you've done a grading plan. You don't know what the cut quantity is on this plan?
I have it. If you give me a minute, I could probably find it, but I don't have the notes with the specific numbers on it right in front of me. Let's see if I can.
We'll give you a minute, Jeff.
Okay. This is from a little while ago. Let's see if I can find the email.
Will all the grading areas be re-topsoiled?
Yes. Yes. Everything is going to be loamed and seeded because we need to have grass growth here. And again, for the dual use, we're going to need to have a, you know, arable, usable, growable soil medium for that haying agricultural use to happen. So they will have to loam and seed everything. And we obviously want that as well for stormwater purposes, to reduce stormwater runoff, to have everything fully vegetated.
So all the hay fields that are pre-existing are going to be ripped up and then reloomed and seeded?
So I don't think that they're not going to really have to do any grading within those existing fields. So those should just be able to stay as is. But as you'll see, like those hedgerows between the fields. So there's some trees and brush in those hedgerows, and, you know, probably some stone walls and things. They are going to have to cut that down and basically just smooth it out. But the fields themselves, they shouldn't really need to disturb those at all. In the area where they do cut the top of the hill down, any topsoil that they strip off, they're going to have to stockpile it, and then they're going to extract the material below and spread it back out from there. Oh, wait, here we go. I think I found it. Let's see. The gravel. Yeah, I think we. Make sure I'm giving you the right number here. Gravel roads.
So
Yeah, I think
Alex, looking board, anyone else have any other questions? Art?
No.
Mike?
No,
Eric?
Nope.
Where'd Katie Grace go? We've lost her.
she flew the coop.
She'll be back.
Let's see if she's still up there.
Not in the waiting room, right? Oh,
No, I don't see her there. Well, I don't see her anywhere on the.
somebody just came on. Jeff, do you have that
Mark.
number yet?
Mark Munchin just, just muted himself.
Yeah,
And
that's okay.
I have dogs that are barking a lot, so I keep muting.
me too.
Do you have any other questions, Mark, besides that import fill question?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right.
By the way, Kichi's on the phone.
Oh, okay. Do you have
My
any
internet
questions?
is down. No, that was it. Just the fencing issue.
Okay. Yep. We're going to try to solve that. Jeff?
Yeah, so I think I found it here. So I think that gravel import volume looks like it's about 3,000 cubic yards.
Okay.
So they're gonna have that, and then there's also gonna be I think we are gonna have some material import required for the basin core. So our basin cross section is gonna have, we're hoping to use the on-site material, which is, you know, not the parent material out there. The sea horizon is not very permeable. So we're actually hoping to use some of that on-site material from that top of the hill to actually build the basin berms, because we want that basin berm to be solid. We don't want to have water, you know, seeping through that berm. So we're hoping to use that material to maybe reduce what we need for the basin berm core, which is typically you know, an impervious core section that they put through the middle of the berm. So we're going to probably have to have some import of that material as well. So we're estimating that's probably somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 yards for the actual berm cores, but we may be able to offset that if the material from on-site is impermeable enough to not need to bring that in. But the material would have to be tested in order to see if it meets the spec for that impervious core material.
So the high end is 13,000 cubic yards.
Probably at least, yeah, in that vicinity, yeah.
So 20,000 wasn't your calculation.
Well, that was like the total cut to fill, just to balance the site. So we were trying to balance out that 20,000 yards or so by using the stuff from on-site to balance out the numbers. But we do have those quantities that we have to bring in regardless, which would be the gravel and then the basin berm core material. So there is,
yeah, that aren't found on site.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience have any questions or concerns? I'll start with Lori. Name and address, please.
Sorry. Lori Haupt, 41 Oak Street. Well, I'm going to try to go slow so I don't forget what I want to say. My feelings of nervousness about this project just grow over time. I feel like there have been a lot of changes from the beginning when it was, just the existing fields to, trying to convince us that you're going to do haying under those panels to now we're talking about animals. So the only animals that you can put under a solar panel are really sheep. And I know you guys know that. And I know that you're going to pay the people to bring the sheep in to eat the grass that is supposedly the agricultural for the dual use. Aside from that, which is completely a scam, I know it's all about the money. We have real concerns here about having those animals up there. If they are going to be sheep, if they're not, that's just dumb. And runoff, there's wetlands underneath it. You have no shelters up there. The solar panels themselves cannot just be the shelter for the animals. You had originally talked about not wanting to disrupt the environment too much, which is clearly not your concern after what we've seen. And, disallowing the wildlife in the area from going through that region. First of all, you're going to have rodents if you don't have any predators coming through there because you have grass, especially if you don't have any animals eating the grass all the time. So there's concerns there about the environmental impact, the runoff from the animal waste. I know that the other day you guys said, hey, we're not sure what kind of animals. You guys are about 10 steps ahead of us. So I know you know exactly what you're doing, and I don't trust anything that you say. But I'd like to hear some kind of response, either at this meeting or planning board, about some of this stuff, because it just keeps getting worse and worse. And you guys are right next to me. You're not going to be my neighbors. You're hiring people to be my neighbors. And I don't like it.
Okay. things pertaining to our jurisdictional items for conservation wise. Jeff, do you want to speak on any of those items? The livestock with the structure items, keeping the livestock, do you want to address any of those things? Runoff. We already talked about the critters, so we're gonna get some information on that. So that they're not prevented from crossing through the areas.
I mean, I could speak certainly to the overall site design and the stormwater design. I mean, those have remained unchanged since the beginning. I will acknowledge that the development of the dual use has evolved, and again, I think perhaps the applicant can give a little more detailed summary of how that would be going. I can just say that the stormwater design is still the same, and we intend that it's going to do what it's supposed to do in terms of capturing runoff from the site. So.
And also along with the BVWs, that you're following the protocols for the Wildlife Protection Act and for our local bylaw.
Correct. We will be reducing.
So we still need to hear about the fencing though, because I think that may be something that may be impactful unless we have some sort of guidelines to say otherwise. Right. Does the applicant want to comment on the concern? Matt, are you still with us?
Yep, still with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as far as the agricultural operation goes, we're in continuing conversations with several potential farmers, and the first plant still is haying, but this project's going to be around for 20, 30 years, so we just want to make sure we have an operation that is flexible and able to accommodate whatever is most appropriate at the time, given the market.
Yeah, Steve, I don't know if we can say much more about the agricultural aspects of it.
Well, I'll take a look. I'll take a look at the, I thought the DEP might have put out some guidelines recently. So I'll take a look at those and forward it to the commission and the applicant.
Okay. All right. Lori, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, this is KG. So if we're talking about agriculture, they bring up a good point. This being a wetland conservation area, that we would need to have an assessment of the number of head of whatever farm animals would be located there, because then we would have to talk about things like animal waste and processing and retention for those as well.
Right. Yeah. I just want to confirm that we're staying in our purview of the local and the state Wetlands Protection Act so that we can utilize those jurisdictional items for the control of the certain things, and the things that we can't control, they may be permittable through some other board, but we can only really keep whatever we're in charge of. We need to stay reviewing that portion.
Yeah, understood. I was wondering if that's what Steve was going to do a lookup on, and what the guidelines are, for if there's agricultural, animals in a location with that space, maybe I'm just being unfamiliar with what our bylaws are concerning agriculture and boundaries between that and wetland areas.
Yeah, there's a DEP wetland program policy 17-1 guideline on photovoltaic system solar array. So I'll send that out to the group.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Lori, did you have any follow-up questions or comments?
Not right now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else in the audience have any questions or comments on this hearing?
Only what I sent you in with the picture.
I'm sorry, name and address, please.
Charlotte Crowell, 78 Torrey Road, Sutton, Mass.
Okay. What's your question?
Again, I'm just I'm concerned about the bittersweet and, the invasive species in the wetland areas. As you can see, I took a picture.
Thank you.
If you blow it up, you can really see all the plants. They come back every year, and the only reason why it's a little short was I stuck up there, which I wasn't supposed to, and cut a few last year.
Oh, okay.
They snake across the ground and they go over the fence, and then they keep going down my trail and spreading out.
Yes, yes. Surely invasive. Steve, we had a discussion a long time ago in regards to the removal of the invasives, right?
I think what the one of the butters from Sutton might have asked if that could be the invasive species. It was more on the
Butter that asked.
yeah, I think it was on the invasive species.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have a recollection?
That and they said they would wouldn't mind they would remove it if they could.
Yeah, sorry, I can actually take that one, Tracy. If you don't
Okay,
mind.
that's what I'm trying to recall. I don't want to say anything unless it's accurate.
Yeah, just through our conversations previously, it's that we'd be comfortable adding in a condition at the end of this, just that includes the right to go in by hand to the wetland buffer area and resource area to clear out invasives.
Okay. All right, does that answer your question or your concern, Charlotte?
He sent me the exact wording, and that is very good. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or concerns in regards to this hearing, 45 Oak? Charlie? Nothing? Nothing? No questions? All right, board. I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing for the 45 Oak to July 13th at 7 p.m. So motions are made by Katie Grace.
Second.
Seconded by Art. Roll call, please.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungum, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda is going to be public hearing continued Southwest Main Street, lot number 1, George Hendricks. Steve, you want to start us off with the revised plans and the update for the for Art Allen's review?
Yeah. So we had a third-party peer review go out and we look at the resource areas and the floodplains, and Art gave us some comments back on June 11th. I forwarded those off to Andrew's survey also. Also invited Andrew's survey to attend the site review with Ecotech. I don't think they were able to do that at the time. And I think I forwarded this up to the commission. It was part of the Google Drive this weekend. And Art had some, he had some questions on the, some issues on a couple of the plans regarding one of them. He's stating that it looks like it's in the floodplain itself, the structure. There was some work within the 25-foot setback because I believe some of the flags have changed. He recommended moving some of the flags closer to the work, which I think the applicant would have to do, put that on the plan, and then show us. He says that I think he said there might have been some work that was done with cutting of trees within the 25-foot already done, which might have been above and beyond the work that was done for exploratory reasons. So he had about 4 comments, 2-page sheet about, and so gave that to the applicant. The applicant, this is why we wanted to wait to look at the plans themselves, because I think they should go back, revise the wetlands, because the site itself, I believe, they had the work right up against the 50-foot line. And that might change based on the peer review.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And the applicant's presenter, Jude, you're here, right?
Yes, I am.
If you could just go down, I guess, Art's list.
Sure.
Thank
My
you.
name is Hugh Govin from Andrews Surveying and Engineering. I'm here representing the applicant, George Hendricks and Aaron Sokrat. Yeah, I wasn't able to get out there. I had soil testing on the day he was supposed to go. I did walk the line myself, and some of we can get into the end of the list is where he talks about moving some flags around and stuff, but we'll start right at number 1. Lot 2, he says that it appears that we're doing some work within the bordering land subject to flooding. He is technically correct. There's 2 sonotubes that are proposed within the bordering land subject to flooding, and 3.5 feet of just an extension of a foundation wall. And part of the project is to shave back a little bit of the contouring on one contour and bring it closer to the house. So I can provide documentation on that, but it's a couple of cubic feet either way. So I found it to be insignificant. So I didn't do the actual compensatory storage calculation. I can certainly provide that, but it's like I said, it's going to be a few cubic feet, maybe 5 to 8, I would say. So that's number 1. Number 2, he talks about some of the work being within 25 foot of the wetland, and that is also true. That the driveway is proposed on lot 1 to be within 15 feet of the wetland, but the bylaw says that no structures can be within 25 feet or 50 feet, and driveways can be within 10 feet. So I didn't ask for a waiver because I thought we were abiding by the wetland bylaw itself. He talks about likely to provide vernal pool habitat, but there are no certified vernal pools out there or potential vernal pools out there. So I don't really know what he was talking about. He said that they likely could provide vernal habitat, but so far there is no documentation that there is. And number 3, it was brought to my attention that Aaron Sokrat, the owner of the property, I guess his nephew was cutting trees out there to provide fire.
If I may interrupt, it's Aaron. Hi, Aaron Sokrat, if I may.
Address, please.
Yeah, it's Aaron Sokrat, 49 Lindbergh Ave, who owns the property currently. And my son helped me, because he's a little bit younger than I am, to take some oak trees for my wood stove. And that's what we did. We took about 6 trees, and which is probably about a third of a cord or a quarter of a cord. It wasn't, it's not a lot of trees, so maybe half a cord tops. And I think we're allowed up to 5 cords and no more than 50% of the canopy in the wetlands for our own use, for burning in my own wood stove. And that's what I did with Nick. So.
Okay, Jude, if you could continue.
Sure.
Thank
So
you.
now we're getting into the wetland delineation stuff itself, number 4. He said that Arthur said he added a wetland flag between wetlands flags 13 and 14. I saw that out in the field, and it's way out in the back, so it doesn't provide any more habitat or buffer zone towards the project area itself. Steve, I don't know if it'd be helpful if you brought up that conservation plan so I can show exactly what flags we're talking about.
Isn't the proposed well near there?
No.
Is it the colored one you're looking at?
You can do, yeah, you can do the colored one. That's good. So just north of where your hand just was, see where it says Cedar Swamp? Yeah. Right in that area, he added another flag. Upland. Between 13 and 14. Yep. He added another flag in there that projects further into the upland area. But if you see that the work is well further away from that. So I can show that on the plan just for record, but it doesn't impact the project itself on A. B, he said that wetland flag 17 was missing and he added one 17R. So if you go, yep, right to the north of that 17, he added one to the left of that about 20 feet. So the same thing. I found 17. It's pretty thick out there, but I found 17. He may just not have seen it, but I do agree that it's in the wetland area. So moving that out to the left about 20 feet doesn't pose a problem, and there's no issue with that. Again, that's far away from the project zone itself, but we can certainly update the plan to reflect that. The next one, C, the distance between 20 and 21, right where your hand is. It's a very, he said it's about 200 feet in area, and it may cut across some of the wetlands and should be redelineated. We certainly can. It is a pretty thick corridor. We looked at the TOA slope in that area, and it pretty much rides along that straight path, but we'd certainly be willing to look at it. Again, projecting if there's another flag added to the north of your hand, straight up through your hand, it's going to project into that internal space where that 50-foot buffer zone kind of collapses onto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, that's, and I was, well, I'll get to this at the end, but so moving forward down to D, the wetland line between 23 and 24 and 24 and 25. If you scroll down a little bit, that right near the driveway, a little bit up more.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
24 is off the screen a little bit, at least on my screen. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. He was stating that it appears that may be cutting across the wetland and needs to project towards the driveway a little bit more. We can look at that some more. But I was just wondering, he hung flags way out in the back. He hung new flags and then didn't hang any suggestive flags between that area. So I was just wondering if he thought it should have been moved, why he didn't move a revised flag for it. But again, we can certainly look at that. I know that wasn't his job, but he did it on some of them and then he didn't do it on some of the other ones.
Are you looking at the purple hatched line?
That's the floodplain line. That's the floodplain line. I'm talking between 23 and 24 and 24 and 25. He says that it may, yep, right where his hand is, it may project out to the left slightly.
Okay.
But again, the first two, A and B, he rehung flags where he wanted them to be, and then he didn't on C and D. So I was just wondering if it was significant enough to even move. I guess we could ask him, but
yeah, because you've got right now you're holding 15 feet from the finished drive.
correct.
Edge.
Yep.
Yeah, so you've got 5 feet to play with essentially.
Sure. I was just like I said, I was just confused because he revised some and not the others, but we could certainly look at it.
Well, that's why I offer to have you guys walk it with me.
That was the point. Okay. All
And
right,
then-
so board, after reviewing the list with Jude, let's go down the line. Does anybody have any comments or questions, starting from the first comment from Art?
Tracy,
Yes?
there's one more item. It's,
Oh, sorry.
I wouldn't say it's insignificant, but it's the last item E between
Okay.
flags 28 and 29 where the culvert crosses the street. I believe the abutters asked about it at the last hearing. Yeah, right there. He just suggested to move 28 and 29 right up to the culvert because that's where technically the water starts to come out of the culvert. So
Correct.
again, no problem with that, but I just wanted to finish the list up.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't have the list. I have the plan.
No problem.
Okay, board, questions? It's a tough site. We didn't get anything back from DEP in regards to comments, right?
They issued numbers, and their comment was to either provide the ANRAD, which we never did an ANRAD, or provide documentation for the wetland flags themselves. And actually, thanks for bringing that up. So I talked to Margaret Bacon, who originally delineated the wetlands, and she said she did not do any flags per contract with Aaron. So, I mean, not flags, sheets. She did not do any data sheets. She did everything based on topography and the hydric soils. So there are no data sheets in existence to supply to the commission.
Steve, is that a requirement for the filing?
It just helps supplements the accuracy of the delineation, but given our third-party peer review, pretty much didn't have too much changes to what Margaret did.
Okay,
I don't have an issue with it.
but for DEP's file, they're asking either for an ANRAD or for the documentation.
Oh, I have to. Is that a suggestion? Is that a comment
I forget
or?
the specific wording, but they said to provide a reasoning of why the flags were placed where they were.
Right.
Maybe
Well,
it's just a simple letter of.
I would say we didn't have that, and we had a third-party peer review and give them Art's review of it.
That's where I was thinking too.
And you're going to revise the bordering land subject to flooding in the permit, or you think that it's not enough to do the revision?
If you want to scroll over to lot 2, we can look at the exact area that I'm talking about.
As far as the guidelines go, though,
Oh, you
for
mean
filing,
the compensatory
accuracy.
storage?
You said, yeah, you had said buffer zone only. And there's no way that you can just remove that out of the bordering land?
We could look at doing it, but I'd rather, if that's the way that the applicant wants it to be, I mean, I could provide documentation and maybe revise the.
I'd have to look at the regs. Unlike wetland filling, where you're allowed to, people are allowed to fill up to, I think, 300 square feet of a finger-like wetland.
Square.
I'm not sure that's applicable to floodplain. So I'd have to look at the, 1056 maybe? CMR 1056, bordering BLSF requirements on compensatory storage.
Yeah.
It's either, it might be, you're either in it or you're out of it. And if you're in it, you have to do some compensatory. But I'm not sure if the commission has the option of doing that unless it's a limited project. Yeah, I'd have to look at that too. It's been a while since we did wetland filling. I mean, floodplain filling.
I don't know if a simple design change could avoid that, and then you wouldn't need to revise your filing.
I'll discuss that with the client and see what he wants to do.
So what is this area right here?
Right where your hand just was, there's a retaining wall on the right-hand side. See that thick black line? Right? No, go to the left a little. Right there. That's a retaining wall. So the house is above that, It's just open underneath. So there's a little projection or retaining wall that goes from that purple line to the yellow line, over to the right. Well,
Right. All right, maybe I'll bring up the other plan.
if you bring up the septic plan for lot 2, it's
Yeah.
it's
Well,
in bigger scale.
we're in lot 1 now, so let me bring up.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Just 2 hearings.
Board questions?
I had a question just regarding the trees that were taken within the wetland area. Is there anything we can, do they have to warn us before they do that, or?
That scenario that I think that Aaron was referencing, it's taken me back about 10, 15 years from the last time someone invoked that. I'd have to take a look at the regulation that gets more into chapter 61 and chapter 60A.
Mass general law.
Well, yeah, well, it gets more into woodland and wooded forestry. I don't think there's a couple of different scenarios or regulations you might be invoking.
Woodland management.
Woodland management, but that doesn't, sometimes that takes precedent over Wetlands Protection Act, sometimes it doesn't, but there's still a filing maybe necessary before they do it, so you could be right. So I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
Just
I believe
because,
there's a filing.
yeah, I mean, you're right. A lot of times, just because you might be exempt or you might be permissible, you still have to go in front of the board to show them that you meet the requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
that
maybe
would be an open space item.
Yeah, so either that or maybe Jude, if you can get that from Aaron, if you could be a little bit more specific on regulations that he was citing with the.
Yeah, that's a new one to me. Aaron seems to be the expert on that, so I'll ask him what.
We've
what he-
evoked that before on our other property, and I thought we were permissible for owner's own use for wood stove up to certain limitations under guidelines. So we were before the board once on another property at the farm, and we were told that it was a non-impact or some term. So really it was like 6 trees, oak trees particularly, burning in my wood stove with help from Nick. So that's exactly what I did, and I thought it was permissible because we went before the board and we found that to be not an issue because it's covered under some guidelines and we had the paperwork. So that's fine, whatever y'all want to do. Yeah. It's like 6 trees, in different locations. It wasn't even concentrated in one location. So.
And it was within the 25, it wasn't in the resource area.
I'm telling you that we were not in wetlands. Well, we didn't have, again, I know that wetlands doesn't have to be wet to be wetlands and it doesn't have to be dry to not be wetlands. So, but we didn't even have boots. I had shoes. So I don't know. It was upland in my mind, but I wasn't going to go walking in the bramble.
Well, it was oak too.
And they were oaks and, it wasn't like underbrush or anything like that. These were pretty good, like probably 10-inch trees. And that we thought we actually went thinking where the houses were going to be. And that's where we did it. That's where I did it. I mean, I know a little bit, and a little bit is the house is being removed. So take the trees that are in the house footprint. I wasn't walking into the wetlands 50 feet in to drag pieces of a tree out, 200 feet from the wetlands. So in my intent, it was not that. It was at the house lots. That's where I was, I thought, so.
Okay. All right, we'll get some more documentation on that. I'm not seeing anything with the amount of disturbed bordering bordering land subject to flooding. I'm not seeing anything, Steve, in the code on that.
Being exempt?
Yeah.
No.
I see that it's presumed and the presumption can be overcome by a letter. I would suggest revising the layout to take that, if it's only a little tiny bit, because there's a presumption under 3 presume such an area is significant, the presumption is rebuttable, may be overcome only upon a clear showing that said land does not play a role in protection of said interests. And then the issuing authority shall make a written determination to this effect, setting forth its grounds, Form 6. So I would see what the applicant wants to do, but I would suggest, I'm not seeing anything in 1057.3, well, 10.57 of the Wetlands Protection Act, 310.
It's
Hey,
in
June.
compensatory storage section. I don't know the exact section reference, but it's in where the floodplain is. It's basically if you fill a cubic foot, you have to take a cubic foot out at the same elevation.
Yeah. So
That's an easy.
I would either have a plan or revise it to eliminate that section. So there,
Okay.
I believe so, unless there's a compensatory storage waiver of some sort that I'm not seeing.
Okay.
Okay.
Just
All
real
right.
quick, is this your final plan? Is this the plan you want me to review, your revised plan? Or do you have a more detailed one you can submit?
The detailed plans are the septic plans.
Okay, those haven't changed?
No, sir.
Okay.
We just have to figure out basically the only wetland suggestion by Ecotech that would impact your review, Steve, would be the wetland flag between 23 and 24,
Right.
whether that moves or not. So I'll have to have a discussion with Aaron about what to do
Well,
there.
I'll get into with my comments, the well, having a sediment basin, well line, distance to wetlands, dimensions on house, foundation outlets, driveway, width, grade, stuff like that.
Yep, okay.
Steve, are those sufficient for detailed plans?
Well, I'll take a look. If you can, if you want to just send me, so I have the latest and greatest in case it changes of the 2 septic plans,
Sure,
that'd be great.
I can send those.
All right.
Mike, do you have any questions?
I'm okay. No,
Katie, Grace?
No, I think we were talking briefly about vernal pools earlier, and that was something that Art thought there was, but then Jude is saying that we don't think that's a concern. There's nothing certified, and there's no reason to believe that there's any in the area.
Right, potential.
There's no potential.
The word potential was not used. It just said ponding areas which are likely to provide vernal pool habitat, which seems like, I don't know. It's very general.
Slope.
Yeah.
Just because the area hasn't been surveyed.
Do you know where those are on here?
Me?
No,
Oh.
Jude, where?
I don't, honestly, I don't know what he's talking about. It just seems like it's part of his review letter. I don't.
Okay.
Think it's more of a BBW?
What's that?
Think it's more of a BBW?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we can see, Katie, Grace, we can see when we go out there too.
I mean,
that was my next question is, did we schedule a site walk? Because I don't have it on my calendar.
Not yet.
Okay. Oh.
We are waiting for the peer review to come back.
Good.
And I have the survey crew scheduled to go out and put some stakes in for the foundation for the houses and some general location for driveway and septic.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we might as well piggyback the meeting on this Saturday, if you're gonna be ready.
We'll be ready.
Mark, do you have any questions or comments?
No, they've been addressed.
Okay, Eric?
I'm all set.
All right.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess do you want to book that? We could do a site walk after the first one on June 20th.
Yep.
Board?
Great.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then any questions from the audience or concerns? Steve, could you stop screen sharing so I could see everybody? Thank you. Sorry, I still am not fast enough. Okay, anyone from the audience? Questions? No. No? Okay. All right, applicant, anything else?
Just what time Saturday?
2 o'clock.
I'd say,
Okay.
say maybe 2 o'clock, 1:45,
Yeah.
1:45, 2
Just need
o'clock.
to know what time to get out of my pool.
Okay, that would be nice. Yeah. Between 1:45 and 2.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to continue or make a motion to continue this hearing to the July 13th, 7 p.m.
Motion's been made.
Second,
Who seconded that?
Mike.
Okay, Mike G second. Okay, and roll call vote, please.
Art Monmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungum, aye.
Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the same street right next door. Lot number 2, public hearing continued for Southwest Main Street, George Hendricks. And do we need to talk about anything specifically for this lot? Jude?
No, we talked about the floodplain stuff had to do with lot 2 and everything
Okay.
else kind of was the same. I almost hung up.
Okay. Anyone from the board have any questions on this one? Okay, anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to July 13th at 7 p.m.
Okay, motion been made,
Second by Mike.
seconded by Mike. All those in favor? Roll call, please.
Mike Greco, aye.
Art Monmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mark Mungum, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is Katie Grace, could you take the wheel?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, I didn't have the agenda open.
So for the next one and the following, and then I will be back for the RDA.
Yep, thank you.
Good, okay. I'm gonna recuse myself from the next 2 hearings
Enjoy.
for the record. Thank you.
Hello, it's Katie Grace Dudley. I'll be going through these. I assume that we're far enough along. We're at 7 p.m. So the next item here is DP number 143-09993, public hearing continued for 93 Davis Street. I guess we've talked about this one in the last few meetings, but for anybody who's new here, this is the building with the parking lot with the detention basin underneath that we've been looking at. Steve, do you want to pull up the plan and share it in case anybody's not familiar? I mean, I'm sorry, I always remember what topic we're on by what it looks like visually. Also, you're muted, Steve, so I can't hear you.
Sorry.
No.
Let me, I did a new folder. Let me see, did I drag out the plan? Hang on. I have to, let me download the plan, but let's see, have Karen give us an update. So real quick, why I download that, let me just share this real quick because I have to just so the commission. Is this letter up on the screen?
It is.
All right,
Yes.
so I went through at the last meeting, there was probably about a dozen questions from the commission. And I think I sent this to, and I wrote these all out and submitted them to the peer review engineer. And so he addressed some of them. And I think Karen also looked at them and had her engineer address some of these commissions. And this should be on the Google Drive.
Steve, I did not get to open those in Google Drive. I'm sorry.
No, but did you address
I did. I addressed the questions
Right.
that were from the last meeting.
So we can go through these questions if you want, or you just, if the commission's interested in that. And in the meantime, let me see if I can download the plans.
I'm interested, Steve.
Okay. Okay. So at our last meeting on June 1st, the commission had a few questions regarding the peer review. And as you can see, the peer review is according to DEP stormwater checklist, which is a very integral part of the stormwater design and report. And the standards are to be met. The peer engineer, I guess, has answered the questions as they've been listed by Steve. There was a question on the size and the depth of the stormwater interceptor. The size of the interceptor, I believe, is roughly 50 by 50 feet. I do have Paul Hutnack, he's the engineer. I do have him on the line with us also this evening. He can answer some of your stormwater questions or engineering questions. The depth of that interceptor is at roughly 101 feet, according to the elevations on the plan. On Friday, I was out on site with the soil evaluator and the third-party engineer, and we did some soil testing out there. The depth of the groundwater was more than 11 to 12 feet as of Friday. It has been sent out for soil sampling, for permeability. It is pretty much bank gravel out there, very permeable. Another question that was asked, the outlet location for the stormwater interceptor and the need to have it in its location so close to the stream. There really isn't any other place on site to put that outlet. The outlet is just an overflow for a small amount of discharge that would leave those infiltrators due to a very large storm, more possibly 100-year storm, but the other storms, the interceptors alone would handle that drainage. Another question was why there was no detention pond. Because of the location of the building on the site and the parking and the traffic flow around the building, a detention pond on site was not going to be an operable, there wouldn't be any place to put it. So that's why the infiltrators were used on site to handle the drainage out there. There's a swale on the right side of the parking lot, and why could that not be used for the outlet instead was one of the questions the board asked. And again, that's a little higher in elevation, and it wouldn't be able to make the flow. You wouldn't be able to use it, it's too high. Does all the runoff go into the catch basins in the stormwater system? Yes, it does. Some of it leaves at the in and out of the parking lot. That was addressed at the planning board. The engineer is looking into that. He can address that. There was a question on the retaining wall in the back of the property. The retaining wall is an interlocking wall that is to be placed in the back. The good thing about that interlocking wall is it's used as a permanent deterrence for going any further into the wetlands. Again, it's up against the 25-foot wetland buffer. And then there were a couple of questions that were asked by the neighbor. One of the questions was that the site, the stream behind the site may be a cold water fishery. Well, back in 2007/2008, there was a study done, and that is not a part of the cold water fishery, but much further downstream, far behind the high school on Wellman Brook, that's the area of the cold water fishery that we believe that.
And I have, I can bring up the email. I think it's in the Google Drive that I have from the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife that did the study. And so I think it was back in 2008.
Okay.
So you're right about that. It was more at the convert of the tributary of Wellman Brook, and then how this comes up. I don't think they ever got as far, they ever crossed Route 16 on the intermittent stream when they came up with their study.
Right. And again, the question was asked about no retention pond on the site. Again, there is not a good place for that on the site. Another question that was asked, the well, the septic, and the stormwater intercept system are all located on the same lot. Is that possible? Yes, according to DEP standards, Title V, as long as they're separated by their appropriate distances, they are all allowed on the same lot. And the pond downstream of the site, will any of the site have impacts on the pond? As far as stormwater drainage, again, not much of it leaves the site. So therefore, and what does leave the site hits the riprap at the end. It pools inside the riprap before it even leaves the riprap. So as far as any kind of scarring down the side of the hill, there shouldn't be any, and there shouldn't be any impact in that pond that is off the site.
And that was from the design engineer.
Those are the questions that were all asked by the commission and the neighbors last.
But those were those two you just read were actually addressed by the town's peer review engineer, right?
Okay.
Also, so
so those were the same ones that, yes, were part of that Google whatever that I did not see. I was pulling up the fishery thing.
So here's the site. One of the comments that the peer review engineer also had, and we haven't had a commercial project in a while, and because this was approved back with the previous commission, they flipped the property, is that in our regulations, and Karen, I gave this to you that you could look at, that there's a, we have a 50-foot no build for residential dwellings, but we have a 75-foot no build for structures in commercial property with I think a 50-foot setback for no disturbance.
I thought it was a 50-foot no build and 25 setback for no disturbance.
In residential.
As far as your bylaw is concerned, yes.
No,
that's what my understanding was.
Well, I sent you the regulations here, and this is part of the peer review engineer also commented on this. So under section in the regulations, under section 10.3, presumption, table 1. I don't know if everyone can see this. This is the.
Yeah, we can.
So I gave you, there is under this 10.3 presumption where you can, and that's what I sent you an email that you can rebut that as long as you come up with the, a statement or documentation that with the preponderance of evidence that you're not gonna impact the resource areas any greater, or you can read the paragraph. It's
Right. So I did come up with a paragraph and I did send that off to you. We are asking for a waiver from your bylaw as far as that is concerned. That the bylaw regarding the limits of work in commercial projects, the project as proposed will overcome this presumption found in the bylaw. The proposed structure is a slab on grade construction and is designed with the underground infiltration system in addition to a retaining wall varying in height from 3.5 to 6'7", located between the parking area and the resource area. The physical barrier of the wall and the difference in the grade shall ensure no opportunity for erosion towards the resource area to occur. The use of a compost sock and siltation fence as construction controls will prevent any possibility of erosion during construction. The site consists of a well-drained sand and gravel, allowing for excellent runoff infiltration, and these factors will prevent alteration of the resource area and will not result in any harm to any areas protected by the bylaw. So I addressed that back to Steve in the commission, along with all these questions being answered. So
I object.
We're not taking comments from the general public yet. We're still talking about this among the board. When we open it out for comment, I'll be sure to hear your objection.
This is information that nobody was aware of, that Steve has just brought to the table here.
Yeah, that's why we're having this hearing, so we can have these discussions, but I want to get the information out before I hear back comments. Please. I'm gonna let Steve finish.
Well, that's the update of what happened last meeting with all the comments and questions, and then with the updated table 10.1 regulations
Okay. Yeah. All right, so then
the site was staked, and I did go out and do a subsequent review, and I think a couple other members might have also.
yeah, I did. I took a walk around the location as well.
I did as well.
Yeah, the only thing I noticed was flags 1, 2, and 3, which were off the property, weren't maybe because they were off the property, weren't I couldn't find them, but those were way over here where my hand is.
I don't know why they were not there. They should have been.
I mean, no, it was good to go walk around on it because it was good to get a sense of the scale. Karen, did you have anything else?
I just wanted to add a little more to the variance that I'm asking for, as far as working within the commercial building within the 75-foot buffer area. Again, it is a slab on grade. We do have a permanent wall in the back to deter any kind of going any further into the wetland area. Any kind of runoff will be met with catch basins and curbing and going into those infiltrator systems. We're trying to protect the site as much as possible from any kind of interruption into the resource area.
Okay. All right, thank you both. Again, just before I go to the public, do we have any comments from the board, and especially any comments? I know a few of us did site walks. Did anyone have any kind of reflections or comments based on that?
I have a question and a comment.
All right, Mark.
My question is what's the elevation of the infiltration basin above the water table?
4 feet.
Okay.
Hi, Paul Hutnack here. How are you guys doing? I just wanted to jump in on that. It's actually 2.5 feet, the way that I discussed it today with some of the results. But so a stormwater system is not a septic system, obviously, and the offset is actually 2 feet. So it does meet that requirement as well.
Oh, are you the engineer for this project, or are you
I'm
developer?
with Guaranteed Builders, but I worked on the plan.
All right, thank you.
So like when you do a gravel pit, you have to stay 10 feet above the groundwater, but you're saying that you're okay to go within 2 feet of the groundwater for
So
the
there's a 2
infiltration?
foot required offset. So for earth removal, the 10 feet, and this is just my understanding of it, I don't know exact, but that is to not, that's more of a larger project, and that's not a final use of that site. So I believe that it has more to do with not depleting the site of its naturally occurring soils above the groundwater, more than an offset to just what is a interim final grade potentially, because typically those sites are developed after that.
So how do you actually calculate the amount of infiltration you can get when you're so close to the groundwater? Isn't it just mainly just going directly into the groundwater?
So there's a HydroCAD is a stormwater modeling software that the system is modeled in. So this system, just to detail a little bit more, is 50 Coltech Recharger 902 HD units, heavy duty units. So these are 4 foot tall units that are 6 feet long. They're layup lengths, so meaning when they're sitting on top of each other. So this program essentially takes the runoff that goes to those, it models it, and runs it through the system with both the Coltech chambers and the stone that surrounds them. It uses the voids of the stone and models the system with an infiltration rate that is based on the soils that it sits in. So when you actually model it specific to your site, to the water going to it, and that's actually was part of what the peer review was to look at that model. And they essentially, they did have comments, but not really any comments on the model at all.
So, so Mark, your question, there was a question on depth of high groundwater, and the peer review engineer said soil testing is required to confirm the groundwater elevation and permeability of the soil. Testing by the applicant that Leonard will observe is scheduled for Friday, June 12th. Does that happen last Friday, Mark? I mean,
Yes. Happened last Friday. I was out there with the soil evaluator and Corey.
Did they confirm that high groundwater table? Or high
That's what I was just referring to, is the depth that they got.
Okay. Is there a way to do a shallower infiltration system to create or to keep more of a separation between the bottom of the infiltration and the groundwater?
Not, I mean, so really we're supposed to create the volume, and that they often do end up in 2 foot offsets to groundwater. I mean, that's the minimum. I think we're actually like 2.5 feet. So to get the volume it would just be too much of an area typically to go to a shallower, because you get less volume per unit basically.
Mm-hmm. Right, it would be a bigger system.
Yeah.
We take up more area. All right, my second comment was that I did observe the stake where the outfall is from this infiltration system, and the ground is pretty steep from there to the brook. And so how is that going to be attenuated?
So good question. So to start, and I don't know if this was, part of the thoughts of the review comments or what his thoughts were, but the way this infiltration system works, all storms except the 100-year storm, so the 2, the 10, and the 25-year storms, all infiltrate. There's no discharge from this system. The only storm that discharges is the 100-year storm, which discharges 0.65, so 0.65 CFS. which is a fairly small amount, obviously, at 2 feet per second, because which is a fairly low velocity. So with that in mind, I sited the riprap at the edge of, basically at the edge of the wall, and continued it for, I believe it's about 4 feet long by 4 or 5 feet wide. And the way that it's modeled is that it has a 6-inch depression in the middle. So it acts as riprap, but it also acts as sort of like a level spreader / energy dissipator. So in that, again, essentially in a 100-year storm, when you're having obviously a significant rain event, is the only time that this is discharging. So that was the sort of the basis behind just adding that small amount of riprap to that area. And by the time you cut the wall in, that riprap is level with where that comes to daylight in the back at the erosion control barrier.
And that's right on the 25-foot buffer, correct?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Those were your 2 comments?
Yes.
All right. Anything else from the board? All right. Yeah, this is still a public hearing, and I would like to hear from whoever else want to make a comment. Steve, again, could you stop sharing just so I can see who's all available? All right. So our first comment, name and address.
Jeremy Flansburgh. I live at 63 Monroe, but I abut the property at 73 Davis across the street. And I have a couple of comments for the engineer regarding the, first off, I know the property is 2.09 acres, but if you minus all of the wetlands out of it, I don't believe that there's enough square footage to put the well, the septic, the building footprint, and this grease and sand interceptor. I've installed them in several school parking lots because I work for the city of Worcester, and these things are huge. And I don't, and they're usually installed in instances where you can't put in a retaining pond to get, it comes down to the outlet and the turbidity. You get sand and everything that goes into the pond where apparently this is going to be draining. And I'm not getting a warm, fuzzy feeling that this is going to work out. I don't think you can fit all that stuff onto the site based on being 2.09 and minus the wetlands out of that. So you're only looking at a 1 acre site. And I don't think it can be done. And I don't think that this is going to work.
Okay. So, Jeremy, have you seen the plan?
No, I haven't. And
Okay.
quite frankly, I'd like to see the design of the actual sand interceptor. That's what I'd like to see, because that's his big thing that he ain't going to be able to fit on it. And he's actually, and now you get this retaining wall that we're talking about. That's in the wetlands.
Well, it's in the buffer. So the thing to understand is those of us in the virtual meeting, or if we were all at town hall right now, we'd be looking at a plan, and I can understand it's hard to picture because they've got all of the things you're describing are fitted on that lot, however. And Steve, what's the general way, now that we have Zoom meetings and the people aren't sitting in the room with us, they can't walk up and look at the tripod? What is our next best means for somebody from the general public to be able to look at that?
I'll send, if Jeremy wants, send me an email and I'll send him a separate link, Google Drive link. Try to email
I
him
don't need a plan. I live right across the street. I grew up there. I ice skated on Maycomber's Pond. I don't need a link. I know exactly where we're talking about.
Right, but
I see it every day.
you asked, and I'm sorry, you asked in this meeting in the last three how they're going to fit everything on the lot, and they have a plan that shows how they fit everything in the lot. And I wonder if
But
you
nobody has talked about the last time I asked the question where this interceptor has to drain to something.
Yeah.
Where's it draining to? It's draining obviously into the pond. Now you guys are saying that the pond is not a cold water fishery. It's the headwaters to a fishery. It is a pond. And for some reason, I thought this was a conservation committee meeting where we all talk about how to conserve the wetlands and stuff of that nature. And you guys are just pouring stuff from a parking lot into a pond. How are we dealing with this?
So that's why we discussed the stormwater management. We're all on the same team here, Jeremy. We're trying to do the right thing. I want you to understand there's not a pond on this site.
Yes, there is. I believe there is. A
Right, and
partial
that's
pond
why
is
I'd
on
like
this site.
for you to have more information. I want you to be able to make your comments with more information. Because right now it's hard for us to understand. It's hard for me to understand what you're trying to say when I don't know where you're pointing to on a plan. Because for those
Have
of us
you done a site
who
visit, ma'am?
are all looking at a plan, and we can see where the outlet pipe is, we can see where the parking lot is, we can see where the retention area is, we can see where the building is, and we can see where the intermittent stream is. We can see all those things visually, and there are numbers that show how far away those things are from each other. And we can all make comments based on that because, we have a sense of scale and we know how big something is. And I want you to have that so that you can make those types of comments.
Well, from what I hear is that the interceptor, because that's really what I'm worried about. And I'm worried about my well too. But the interceptor is now just coming out and it's going through some riprap. Is that what I'm seeing? And the riprap then would just feed into the headwaters of a cold water fishery.
Right. So what's shown on the plan is there's an interceptor that holds, Karen, you can clarify if you want, it holds the water.
Yes.
Which then drains out, and it does point, it has an outlet right now that is near-ish, and the map shows how far to the intermittent stream, and that's why we've been discussing the outlet. So yes, Karen, sorry, go ahead.
It discharges in a 100-year storm out to the riprap. In the largest storm possible, it discharges to that riprap. But again, there's no pond on the site, and it doesn't discharge to a cold water fishery.
First off, I disagree with you. I think it does discharge into the headwaters of a cold water fishery, and I'm an engineer, and I know what it's like I design roofs all the time, and a 100-year storm is automatic. You always design to a 100-year storm, if not maybe even a 150-year storm, and to not design it to a 100-year storm, I think is foolhardy. That's stupid. I don't know why you wouldn't design to at least 100-year storm. I think that's
Paul,
crazy.
Can you explain this better to him than I can, Paul?
It is designed to a 100-year storm. What we're saying is that is the only storm that there's actually flow that comes out of the pipe from the infiltrator system. All other storms are infiltrated into the ground.
Well, then, if it's a asphalted parking lot, why wouldn't it be designed to a 100-year storm?
It is.
You're talking two different things. You're talking dirt parking lot and asphalt parking lot.
All I can say, sir, is that I've essentially, the plans are designed to meet the regulations in place, and a review engineer that reviews third party, meaning he's not affiliated with us, he's working for the town, reviewed the plans and essentially had no comments on the stormwater system. That's not to say there were no comments at all on the project, but essentially from what I read, there were no comments on the stormwater system of anything that, basically that of the modeling of it.
Eddie, I would see if he's got any other questions. So we're gonna move on to.
Okay, yeah. Jeremy, beyond the stormwater management, what other concerns did you have with the project?
I don't know. I'm just, I guess nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It just, obviously, I just didn't get any answers. Thank you.
We've tried to answer your questions the best we can.
Hi, this is Teresa from TNZ. We just had a meeting on the 11th with the planning board, and this was the same thing that Jeremy brought up, along with Richard, who brought up the validity of this design.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that was satisfied was the chair of the planning board said, "Is this a stamped plan?" And Paul was on that night, who did an excellent presentation. And with that being said, the planning board was satisfied with the fact that this was to scale and stamped by an engineer, and both Paul and Leonard, I can't remember the name of the gentleman's name, that they were happy with the fact that this is all valid. This is all up to code and what it's supposed to be. And why Jeremy and Richard keep questioning the validity, I don't understand.
Okay. No, thank you, Teresa. I just, like I said, I want to make sure that we're open to the general public to hear their comments and concerns.
I understand that. Believe me, I understand that. But this is just, we just satisfied this on the 11th, that they were pleased and they were waiting. They knew we were coming to conservation tonight. And if the water levels were where they were supposed to be on Friday, then the planning board had no problem with the stormwater. They were going to accept it.
Okay. Again, they're a separate board from us, but thank you for the background information.
No, I kind of take offense to that you think I'm trying to be like vindictive or something. At the time when you made the request, ma'am, you didn't even know where the water table was. So at least now we know where the water table is tonight.
Jeremy,
we didn't know where the water table was last week.
Jeremy, are these comments relevant to the concerns of the Conservation Commission?
I think the water table is very relevant to the conservation.
Do you think that our water table as documented is incorrect?
I asked a question at the planning board, which this lady is questioning me on, and nobody knew what that table was. There's an excavator sitting out here on Route 16 that I guess apparently have done a boring.
We got a couple more items
We're not talking about the excavator at this point. Sorry, Steve, what did you need?
we have a couple more items we gotta be getting to, so,
Okay,
hopefully we can stick to some relevant new information.
all right. All right, are there any other concerns from the general public? All right, thank you. So,
We're waiting on, so it's, planning board, I mean, still waiting for our site plan review.
yep. So we're gonna, where I would entertain a motion to continue this.
Can I ask a question, Katie?
Oh, yes, please do. Sorry, Karen.
That's all right. Can we entertain that waiver that I'm asking for this evening? Being
I haven't
the waiver
seen
for
the
the
waiver
building.
yet.
Say that again.
I'm sorry, I just haven't seen the write-up you were talking about. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
Was that something that was submitted to the board? Did I miss it?
Yeah, it should be in the Google Drive. I can resend it to the board.
Okay, so we do have it.
Yeah.
So would we approve the waiver separate from the rest of the project, Steve?
Usually.
And board, do you have any comments about the waiver?
I think
I'm for the waiver.
Okay.
I think that would just be part of the notice of intent approval. And then
That we would put it as part of the notice of intent approval.
part of the order of conditions that you're granting they've overcome the
Okay.
presumption of section 10.3 of the regulations.
Okay.
Can I
So we're
ask?
gonna-
Can I ask if the commission has any other questions that I can answer tonight?
Yeah, so making sure that we, I guess I would just remind the board that if we're planning to include the waiver as part of the notice of intent, to make sure that everybody on this board looks at the waiver, so we know we know to include that we know that that's part of the plan.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you guys understand, and not to speak for Karen, but we're trying to come back to this next meeting knowing that, okay, we've satisfied the planning board and we want to, try to make sure that we satisfy anything that you guys have so that this next revised set of plans is the plan.
I understand you don't want to ask us to ask any new questions that you haven't seen before.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Paul, I'll just say that I'm still a little concerned about the outfall for the 100-year storm from the infiltration as to the location. So I'm going to take a look at the plan and see, if there's anything that I can suggest differently.
Sure. So elevation wise, that is essentially the only spot that can get to daylight. There's not, if that outlet's at like 103.7. I don't have the plan in front of me, but it's low.
Right.
So there's just not another, maybe 5 feet left or right, but there's not a great spot that's very far away from that area. So that's really the reason for it needing to be there is elevation.
Did you?
Okay.
And I don't. Yeah, I thought we talked about this at the 100-year with the 100-year store calculations. Did you have an outflow number for that outlet?
0.65 CFS at 2 feet per second.
Okay.
So it's pretty small. I mean, for a 100-year storm to be, I've designed a lot of ponds in my day. That's not a lot of flow coming out of a basin in a 100.
Right, so the question is, it's not going to be coming out like a fire hose and scouring the hillside and eroding a big gully into the hill, into the slope.
No, I mean, there's going to be torrential rains in the 100-year storm that have probably just as much potential as that, if you think about it. It's under 1 CFS at a very slow rate.
I mean, that's why we asked for the values. So no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And that is a comment that I need to iron out with the review engineer as well. But
Okay.
So, but I mean, I'm assuming I'll have a similar conversation with him. You know, something like that.
We
Did
appreciate
I
it.
ask a question?
Jeremy, what is your next, do you have a new question?
Yes. Is there any turbidity requirements for the outfall?
Turbidity?
Turbidity.
Yes. Yes.
Sure.
It's a big problem. I'm doing a school right now, and it's a big problem.
You're talking about the turbidity of the waterway. That's something that's measured based on light refraction through water. So you wouldn't be able to measure turbidity until after it's in the intermittent stream.
Correct. I believe it comes from the outfall of the water that comes out of the pipe.
Well, because of the water's only coming out of the pipe at a 100-year storm, and on a 100-year storm, that intermittent stream is going to be flowing so much water, it's not going to be noticeable if there's any turbidity in it.
So no, there is not
Correct.
a turbidity requirement.
But we're not designing to a 100-year storm, as you had mentioned.
We are designing to a
We are designing to a 100-year storm. And that is the only time water is not being infiltrated and comes out the outfall pipe.
You're talking about a storm that gets 6.7 inches of rain in 24 hours. That's something we haven't seen.
Yes, I understand.
It's probably 1955, I would say.
But that's not. I don't care what year it was. I'm you know, you got to design for what it's supposed to be designed to. Whatever that is, that is.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, no, we're all agreed that this is designed to the 100-year storm. Okay.
Right, so we have July 13th open.
Okay, Steve, thank you. I hadn't noticed that until just now. Yeah, I guess.
Before we make a motion, I'd like to just one more last time revisit the waivers and just, is there a consensus of the board if you can't vote tonight that you are okay with the waivers or will be granting the waiver? Or if you feel comfortable voting on the waiver tonight separately? I guess we just want to try to make sure we do as much as we can to know what information we can know.
Based on my reading of the waiver, I have no questions on the waiver. The rest of the board, we've asked all our questions on the waiver.
Katie
do not
Grace?
plan on voting on the waiver tonight. Sorry, Art, go ahead.
Well, I'm having trouble finding the waiver. I haven't even read it, and I'm looking at the zip drive, the Google Drive.
They didn't give an official. Did you put a? Were there explanation on it, or it wasn't? Was it, Karen? Was it a separate memo?
No, it was in with the questions and answers.
It's in with the questions and answers. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I haven't reviewed it yet, so I don't know about the rest of the board, but I don't think we're going to be prepared to answer Paul's question. I don't know if we're going to be prepared. I'm not going to be prepared to vote on it today.
Right. I'm not going to ask.
Is the waiver posted on the website? I don't know anything about any waivers. I'd like to read the waiver.
All right. So were you going to email Steve and ask him for the files for this project?
I will.
All right. Thank you. Yes, he can get you that to you.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, I was not planning on voting on the waiver tonight. Obviously, I'm gonna see if we, Art and Mike, and we look like they're staring intently at our screens, and we can look at it, see if we have any questions that we can ask tonight.
Did you just ask me a question? I'm sorry.
I did not.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's actually, so I believe it's an overcoming of the presumption in the bylaws. It may not be technically a waiver that you grant. It may be that you make a finding essentially that it
It's just
overcomes.
it's part of the order of conditions, and if they approve it, then they put it in the
Right.
order of conditions
But
that.
it's not, so I guess what I'm saying is it's not like a.
It's not a waiver, it's not a
control
zoning
or
waiver.
something, right?
No.
No. So on the Google Drive, there's a file that says comment response letter to Conservation Commission from GBI dated June 8th. The last paragraph on that, on the section 14, they get into explanation of how they overcome the presumption.
Is this the one that starts with additionally, the applicant would like to
Yes.
address?
Yep.
Isn't that what Karen already read aloud?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there's a couple other documents where there's listed questions.
Right. Yeah, sorry, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, I was reading along on a different one.
And so we answered the questions and the review engineer answered the questions as well.
No, and I can see you've provided us a wealth of information that we can look at.
I would just say that that needs to be pretty strong as to the presumption so that it helps us to be able to approve of that.
All right, so I'm not going to hold up. We're not going to spend the rest of the meeting reading the packages, but we will prepare ourselves as well as we can to, you know, potentially vote on this. I mean, unless there's something outstanding. I mean, I don't know if I'm not going to say what we're going to vote next time, but we'll try and make ourselves prepared.
Just on the plan, as the plan is laid out, it seems like the commission is satisfied with that. It's just kind of down to you reviewing this information. Is that a reasonable statement?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we had a number of comments that you kind of, that you couldn't get around from. I mean, in previous meetings, we've talked about how long the building is, how far it goes back, how far it is into the buffer zone. Those are all things that we kind of took issue with, but you were saying that you can't do anything about it. So, and there's a similar one with the outflow pipe. We wondered if that could be moved, and you're saying that's the only place it can go. So,
okay.
I mean, that's where we're at.
Okay, I apologize if I was not up to speed on everything.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Are you anticipating site plan review approval soon?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, site plan was actually waiting for Leonard to do the water tables on Friday. And the planning board did say that if the water tables were where they were supposed to be for what was already designed, that they were perfectly happy with that. We addressed 98% of.
But you're gonna get their official approval vote from the planning board at the next meeting?
So yes, so at the meeting on whatever it was, Thursday, we talked through everything. There will have to be a final revised set of plans that they'll then write presumably a clean letter on that you would get as well. But in the interim of time, because they were a month between meetings, I asked that if they could draft a positive decision so that at that meeting, we could approve it rather than going to that meeting and then starting a decision. And they were in agreement with that. So they really didn't have any issues that was holding them up except just sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So we feel good about that.
You'll have planning board approval. Yeah, so typically commission waits for planning board approval. So you'll have that approval next time you come to the commission.
Well, so that's the 15th. So if we continue to the 13th, I would like to continue to the 13th. And if we have a clean letter and a draft decision that we like, we may want to have you take a vote that night if that's amenable.
We'll see where we're at then.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Assuming you're okay with it too.
Right. It sounds like you're trying to really push this along, but we're not gonna guarantee anything that's gonna happen at the next meeting.
Oh no, I'm not asking you to.
Okay.
I want everybody to know here that there is an appeal process to this whole thing, whether it comes to conservation or planning.
Understood. Yes, thank you.
Oh,
All right, so then the next, oh yeah, I was gonna entertain a motion.
Yeah, Katie Grace, I'm going to make a motion that we continue this to the July 13th meeting at 7 p.m.
So moved. Wait, who seconded?
Mike seconded
Thank you. All right, we'll take a vote.
Art Montmany, aye.
Thank you.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungem,
Eric Harris, aye.
Thank you, everyone. All right, it's been.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you for
very
your time
welcome.
tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a great night. See you on the 13th.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So then the next item I have on the agenda, Wallum Lake Road shade tree cutting.
Hi.
Hi, Maria.
There's Maria.
I'm here as well as Evan Turner for this.
Yeah. See Evan. Thank you, Evan.
So,
yeah.
I sent plans to Steve pretty late today. So I'm sure that they were not in your drive folder, but essentially it's a letter that discusses what we discussed last time about mitigation for doing work in the buffer zone area. And it specifically has a table in it that has the plant species and how many we were proposing.
Oh, wonderful.
We lost Steve for a minute here.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Steve, did you hear all that?
Oh, I missed it. What's going on?
I sent you an email pretty late today.
Yeah, I
So
got
I
it.
was wondering if you could grab that and share it with everyone.
I did. I downloaded it. Hang on. It was Wallum Lake.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that Maria? You want to kind of go through it, or?
Yeah, so I mean, the last time that we talked, we had discussed some mitigation for doing work in the buffer zone area. That included, doing snags in some places instead of completely taking the trees out, as well as some plantings in the outer 25 feet, because that's the area that we're really essentially clearing. So the plan was to replant it to a certain extent with shrubs that would just not grow quite as high as the trees, so that you could still get the benefits of a vegetated buffer zone without the shade issues, which is the whole purpose of coming to talk to you.
So I have here, I don't know if you see it, I got the types of shrubs that you're planting.
I'm looking at them.
And you have
Right, so the buffer zone really kind of offers two major things. It offers wildlife habitat, so the shrubs that we've chosen are things that are all considered very high value for wildlife because they're berry producers and such. And then the other thing that the buffer zone really does for you is it assists with stormwater management, and the primary way that it does that is by basically being there as a buffer for water to hit first when it's coming down to dissipate it, but also as an obstruction when it's flowing downhill. So the idea of putting in these plants is to kind of fulfill both the wildlife and the stormwater benefits of the buffer zone. A couple of notes. I know that we have a lot of trees that we've proposed to take out, and we've proposed 300 plantings. That's in part because at the last meeting, we all discussed that there's very likely going to be a lot of regrowth because we're not pulling the roots of the trees out and stuff. But also because we're not doing that, we are going to have limited space to actually plant in. So we believe that this is about as much as we can reasonably fit in there without making a really big mess.
Yeah, so for all the members, if you're on Google Drive, I just posted it on the Google Drive. It's not in a folder, it's just a PDF underneath the folders that says Wallum Lake Buffer Zone. Now, Maria, one of the major items from the last meeting is that with the DEP comments on the stormwater that you guys revised, there's a revision to the stormwater management that was approved from site plan review on planning board, and you went back to the planning board to let them know the updates and get approval from them on that. I didn't see anything that came forth, an email or anything that says that you guys did that or they're satisfied with the changes.
Well, we definitely provided them with things, but I'm going to let Evan answer that.
Thank you. So we went to Mr. Bill Cundiff for that engineering review, and we hoped to address it at the last planning board meeting, but similar to this meeting, there was an avalanche of things to talk about, and it was going to be one of those 3-hour affairs. So they stuck very specifically to the application I had in front of them, which was a subdivision recombination. They didn't speak and take the time to discuss and confirm the stormwater runoff concerns in this DEP comment. What I'd like to do is continue here, and if you're able and willing, considering the information in front of you, close and perhaps vote with the condition that the Conservation Commission has to be provided evidence from Mr. Bill Cundiff and or the planning board that the stormwater does in fact not change in any significant manner from the original design. Please keep in mind the original design. The reason with this is it's not really a priority because the answer is relatively obvious. The stormwater was designed with the site plan review, which is not changing, by the way, to have the stormwater edge that we were grading ourselves to is outside the 100-foot buffer. It is the road, effectively, of the project site, which starts outside the 100-foot buffer. So given that the stormwater standard is to a site outside the wetland and we are not changing the long-term ground cover of the area we are proposing to selectively clear, it will have a negligible impact on the stormwater itself because the standard was judged outside of that threshold.
Right. So
I can try to get Mr. Cundiff to come back to you guys in an email. We're in the same bind. If there's, obviously your next meeting is before the next planning board meeting, but they just did not have the bandwidth to get into that kind of discussion at their last meeting with several of the same topics you have seen here. This meeting were taking place during the planning board meeting as well. So it just wasn't the closest thing on fire to attack immediately. I guess I'd ask the question, aside from the stormwater, does the board or the commission have any concerns about what we've submitted? And do they require any further information before we would close and vote?
I just want to add, to reiterate what Evan said, that when you do stormwater modeling, you pick a cover type for given areas, and because of the replantings that we're proposing, the cover type does not change, so the calculations don't change. So that's why we're saying it's negligible.
Right, which probably understandable. It's more a procedural thing where the DEP made comments. The stormwater was for the entire site. And so the stormwater calculations filings was for the entire site, which the entire outlay of the solar canopies. So your original permit for site plan review, stormwater has technically changed a little bit. And does the planning board know that?
They know of the prospective clearing we're doing, but the stormwater for the site itself hasn't changed. The ground cover isn't changing for the area we're prospectively clearing, and the stormwater was modeled to be, I guess, to be the net even outside of the 100-foot buffer already. So there's no change in the runoff to that 100-foot buffer, in addition to the no change in ground cover. And I'm happy, I can go back to Bill and try to have him send a note to the Concom before obviously the next meetings. But it wasn't pressing enough to warrant his attention during the meeting to spend the planning board's time. I wish they would have had time to cover it. I could not drive the meeting like that. They had so much to do. So that's why I would ask, maybe it's just add a condition in the order of conditions, presumably the presumable order of conditions, that you require the planning board to verify the stormwater has no functional impact, negligible change, however you want to write the wording.
No, but is this change, the original site plan, plan didn't show this expansion.
No.
And it didn't show the expansion or the additional comments from DEP or from, so that change, this change to the site plan has not been, would you ultimately have to go back to the planning board with stormwater change or not, because you're changing the site plan?
We would not, because we're not really changing the site plan. Everything that we're not moving any roads, we're not moving any arrays, we're not changing ground cover of any, from the site plan of any component of the properties. So there's nothing to change in the stormwater. If we were, say, clearing the area we're talking about to grass cover, that would be a change. But this is going from the wooded property to the same wooded property with obviously clearing and some replanting.
Right. It's an easy solution, but unfortunately, your notice of intent has a stormwater review for the Conservation Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Which if you don't get, which you're saying 99.9% of it was already done through planning board.
Yes, sir. And I couldn't wrangle them to say that during the meeting because they just didn't do it.
If planning board is not going to acknowledge the NOI from the Conservation Commission, then we're going to have to send it out and have someone probably review it to get it, to say that it's okay.
Yes, sir. So I think what I'm driving at here is I'd like to do that over the next month and get Mr. Cundiff to send you that notification. And I'll just brute force politely carve that time out of his schedule. And otherwise, I'd like to know if you have any other homework you'd like us to address relative to being, in a position where you can vote and prospectively approve the NOI. Just so we don't have something else come up at the next meeting.
Well, the last meeting, we requested that you said you're going to bring it in front of the planning board and have that answer by this meeting that they were okay with the stormwater, and you're saying you didn't do that. So
I tried to do that and they did not address it during the meeting.
It's up to the commission. Either that or they can send it out to have it reviewed.
I mean, I'll try to take one more meeting with the planning board. Their meetings are very similar to these that are running 3 hours plus. So it just unfortunately did not get addressed during the meeting.
Look, I understand it's hard to get your stuff through in the meeting, but I mean, it is what it is.
So I guess focusing, does the commission have any other concerns about the non-stormwater topics and documents we've provided?
Board?
We're still no stump removal, right? All these trees?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure.
No, we don't have any other questions or comments. It's just that.
Thank you. Well, then that narrows my homework down considerably, and that gives me one thing to focus on.
There you go. Thank you. All right, so while we wait on that, I might entertain a motion if there's nothing else we wanted to talk about for this part.
There's nobody in the public that needs to talk about this, right?
No. I mean, I hate to answer for the public as a whole, but I can't find anyone in the public to speak right now.
Just want to make sure we give them the opportunity.
No, I appreciate it, Art. Thank you.
In that case, I'll make a motion that we hopefully we can review the stormwater stuff next time, and we'll go to July 13th at 7 p.m.
Can we make a request to be a little further near the front of the 7 p.m. schedule, since we've been at the end many times now?
See, but then, so I understand.
I'm just throwing it out there. You're going to do whatever you're going to do. It's just that we've been very patiently waiting through all the other hearings multiple times, and other people have not had to do that per se.
You are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, this is I'll see what I can do, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you for considering it.
Okay, so Art made the motion.
I'll second, Mike.
Mike seconded. We'll take the roll vote.
Art Montmany, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungem, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. And yeah, Maria, I'll see what I can do. I mean, normally I would just be like, well, you know, as we move through them, then the list gets shorter, but that hasn't happened for several meetings now. So we'll see what we can do.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask.
Oh no, it never hurts to ask. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next one we've got 7:15. We're past 7:15 now.
Is this Tracy coming back on this one?
Tracy should be coming back,
Okay.
and we're going to talk about 28 Maple Street.
I don't know anything about this one.
No, nor do I.
This in 20 years, something like this has come up, I think, twice.
I know about this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
I'm to blame.
Uh-oh.
Hi.
Tracy, you're back.
Hi, everybody. Okay.
We're going to talk about Maple Street.
28 Maple Street. I'll read the notice. Town of Douglas Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing for Steve Sanders on June 15th, 2020 at 7:15 p.m. in the Municipal Center, 29 Depot Street, for work to be done pursuant to the Town of Douglas Wetland Bylaw and the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40. The proposed work location will be done on 28 Maple Street and involves a request for determination regarding jurisdictional wetland resource areas as defined by the Wetlands Protection Act. Public participation will be via virtual means only, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Douglas Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation. The public may participate in this meeting via remote participation. A website for the meeting will be provided on the conservation agenda posted on the town's website at least 48 hours prior to the meeting. Copies of the RDA may be examined electronically by contacting Maria LaJoy at mlajoy@douglasma.org, May 29th. Okay, welcome, Margaret. Hello?
Margaret's muted.
Oh, she's muted herself. I'm trying to get back to the main screen right now. Okay. All right. Yes, you're a little quiet, but yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm here tonight representing my client, Steve Sanders, regarding an active construction project right now out there at 28 Maple Street. I guess there was concerns. It was back in, I believe, the beginning of May, towards the end of April, regarding the amount of ponding that was taking place in the low point of the field. That's Steve circling right now, and there is a low point there, and it does pond a little, and I did look at that during the design process, and I did the calculations to determine if it was an isolated land subject to flooding, and my calculations say no, it's not. And so I did meet Steve out there on site back in May, and he wanted me to provide additional calculations documenting whether this was or was not an isolated land subject to flooding. And I did provide those documentations to Steve several weeks ago. I believe that's one of the reasons we're here, to make that determination whether it is or it isn't. And per my calculations, we don't meet the criteria to be an isolated land subject to flooding. about half the size of what's needed to meet that criteria. And most of the stormwater that gets onto that pools in that area is actually coming from Maple Street. There's really, when you do the calculation, there's really no flow coming in from any other areas of the site other than Maple Street. And it's right at the bottom of the Maple Street. And during construction, they opened up a swale a little more that captures more of the road runoff that goes right into that site now.
So there's,
sorry, Steve, you
yeah,
can go first.
So I put on a Google Drive with the conservation handbook on isolated land subject to flooding, the criteria, and it gets into the watershed and then how much it goes to it and the in-depth, and there's probably about 3 or 4 different things that you have to meet that criteria. And in that handbook, it actually has a couple of examples because it gets kind of complicated on exactly how do you determine isolated land subject to flooding? So in one of those, and let me bring up screen sharing here. I think this is, I don't know if everyone can see the calculation sheet here. So in this figure 9.6, this is an example on determining an isolated subject to flooding. And this is from the handbook, and it says step 1, is it isolated, based on the 100-year floodplain and has no outlet. And so Margaret went through these and she answered no on a few of them. And so if you answer no on one of them, then it's not isolated land subject to flooding. So I asked her to just kind of write over the examples just so the commission can kind of see the criteria and what's an isolated land subject to flooding.
Just to expound upon that a little, I did these calculations 3 different ways, and all three calculations pretty much come up with the same thing, which also supports, the field observations, what I saw in the beginning. So all my calculations pretty much are telling me the same thing. It's about half the size of what's needed to be considered an isolated land subject to flooding.
And you took the calculations based on what's in existence right now, not what was proposed?
Based on the watershed size and the amount of impervious area and the ground cover. Yes.
So when I'm looking at this portion and I'm looking at the pictures, so your extent of the isolated.
So do you see the video I have?
Yes.
All right, so this is the isolated land subject to flooding. When they first signed off on the permit, there was just a house, a septic, and a well, and then this area gets inundated.
I'm just wondering, is it the plan? Is it before or after the site was disturbed? So did you actually? Are these field measurements from today? From what the video shows?
Before.
The calculations?
Yeah.
Yeah, before.
So no material was moved out of there to create that depression?
Over there, no.
No.
No, that depression exists.
It existed before?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yeah, I walked that part of the trunk line quite often.
Okay.
And noticed or heard the spring peepers from that area. So that's why I notified Steve and said, I think this area might be a regulated area, and they're building next to it. And so I asked if he wouldn't just look into it.
Right.
So.
Right, because it looks like the material has been brought into the site. Like I'm watching the video right now.
Yes, some of that material where the house or where the foundation is looks like it has been imported. The back has not. They just graded the back, but the front, maybe some has been imported.
And the sides?
Not at the side, only to hold up the foundation. Right now, the wet area or the hollow, is to grade. It's what it was originally. Hasn't
Okay.
much change made.
Okay, that's what, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
So Steve, if it isn't isolated land subject to flooding, there's no protections for it, correct? It can be filled, graded, whatever can.
Right, so there's a couple of things when even for sake of argument, so even if I have the plan up, so there's no buffer zone to isolate the land subject to flooding. So if it was, the work they have proposed is outside the jurisdiction of the commission because there's no buffer zone to that area.
Yeah.
But if it's not, which the calculations in the handbook stipulate that it doesn't meet the criteria, then it's not jurisdictional. They could flood it in. And what Margaret did, put it on the plan that she wanted to know that even though it's not, that it does help with some stormwater. So she said she's recommending that they don't fill it in just because of their own property. It would help them from, to keep some,
Right.
the ponding there.
It's already a designated area.
Right. And when it comes to isolated land subject to flooding, maybe I'll take the plan off so you can see me. It's kind of tricky where if you walk into the middle of the woods, I think there's one that's farther up off of Maple Street. If you come out of here and go towards Franklin on the left-hand side, you'll see that it's a natural bowl that's surrounded by a drainage area and everything collects in there. It could be a vernal pool. This area, even if it meets it, it's a little tricky. I personally would look into it because a lot of the runoff looks like it comes from Maple Street. And so technically you're not supposed to have an inlet or an outlet when it comes to an isolated land subject to flooding. So I'm not sure if drainage off of Maple Street would characterize of having some type of inlet.
Inlet, yeah.
But regardless, it doesn't meet the characteristic or the criteria according to Margaret of being doesn't meet the calculations.
Okay.
And my client doesn't plan on filling that in anyways.
But I know there was some issue with drainage off of Maple, and Mark looked at it. Other people walked through there, looked at it. I just wanted to say, you know what, it's just, might as well nip this in the bud, come in front of the commission, make a determination, get the calculations so to satisfy the commission, hopefully.
Okay. Board, any other questions? So we have the documentation.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. I'm just happy to hear that they're not filling it in.
Yeah, I mean, that could make another wet spot somewhere else.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Board, any questions? Any other questions? I'm gonna get back to you. Oh, there we go. Stephen Sue, do you have a question about this?
No.
Okay. All right, Aaron didn't realize he's still on, I guess. And that's it. That's all we got.
Well, Steve and Sue were muted by us, so we would have to unmute them.
Well,
do you have questions?
Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this point. I think that Margaret has explained, I think, the situation well. So I'm satisfied.
Okay, thank you. All right, board, this is a request for determination, so I'll entertain a motion. I don't think we need any conditions or anything.
No, I'd make a motion to issue a negative determination.
Okay, motion's been made.
Yeah, second.
Second by Art. All those in favor, roll call.
Art Montmany, aye.
PG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mungem, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
So I have 3 items. We can probably skip anything else if the board's getting late.
Yeah, I would agree. Board, we can
3 procedural items that I'd like to get through.
okay. What you can get rolling.
One is 34 Conservation Drive. It was omitted from the agenda by accident, but they did file a in the ad. He placed the ad, so I would say you open the hearing and continue it to July 13th.
Okay, let me do that. I've got to get to my public notices, I believe. Board, you okay with that?
Yes.
We got a long agenda for July 13th.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully,
Is that every meeting? Okay, so not reasonably anticipated for this tonight's hearing on June, what day is it? June 15th. So the Town of Douglas Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting for 34 Conservation Drive on June 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Center, 29 Depot Street, for work to be done pursuant to the Town of Douglas Wetland Bylaw and the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40. The proposed request for determination of applicant work location is 34 Conservation Drive, and the applicant is requesting permission to remove stumps and debris and fill in section of slope and buffer zone to be published one time in the June 12th, 2020 issue, to be published one time in the June 11th, 2020 issue. This was appeared in the Worcester Telegram on June 11th. So it is just a public meeting also. So, board will just, I'll entertain a motion to continue this.
I'll make a motion to continue this to July 13th at 7 p.m.
Okay, motion's been made
Second.
and seconded by Art. All those in favor, roll call, please.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Art Monjamai.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Next.
all right, 36 Davis Street, which is right across from the entrance of the high school on the left-hand side. It's Mr. Fitzpatrick. He's a lawyer, contacted me. There's a couple outstanding or old order of conditions that is on the property. One of them is from 2000 from the previous owner, and I have them here. This is for a well, which a well and a septic, which I believe the commission signed off on because he came for a NOI for his garage, which would have showed it. They can't find a certificate of compliance for that. It was done back in 2000. So he's requesting for the previous owner that for a certificate of compliance on the septic and well that was done about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And
That's
then
the first one.
and the second one is actually for this garage, which I found a certificate of compliance. This is it. And it's signed by the commission, so I'll give it to his lawyer. But just in case the registry of deeds won't take it because it's so old, you can vote on reissuing it and then you can sign it again.
Okay, board, do we want to make a joint motion on those two items to issue the first one from
One
20
is-
years ago,
One is DEP number 143-470.
470, and to re-sign the one that was never recorded?
I mean, were they compliant?
On the projects that they did, yes, I've been
Yeah.
out there because this is to the left. They're doing the water line. I've been in the backyard. I might have video of it, but yeah, it's all done.
The one from 20 years ago, you got.
I just want to make sure we're not blindly signing things.
Where were you 20 years ago?
They actually.
The well,
Hey.
the well is in. The well is close to the brick. That's in, and the septic is done, and they're mowing the lawn.
I was very concerned about urban sprawl 20 years ago.
So you're saying it's a moot point anyway, Steve?
Well, they complied with the order.
Even if they can't find it?
I'm sure the first one, if they knew
We'll make
about
sure they
it.
didn't build like a.
What? What? Anything?
Just making sure they didn't build like a giant secret lair somewhere.
Oh no, I've been out there because we did the second one came after, which the commission signed off on.
I'll entertain a motion. Or we can talk about it all night long.
No.
Want me to bring up the GIS?
What, Mark?
Uh,
No.
Well, I'll make a motion that we reissue the orders of conditions from whatever date it was.
2000.
I'll second it.
And re-sign the one that Steve's holding in his hand.
Right.
Okay. Motion been made by Art, seconded by Katie Grace. All those in favor, roll call for the 2 certificates of compliance.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mangum,
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is my screen on the,
Cummings
Yeah, it
Court,
is.
there's one tree that is dead.
Yep.
Are we gonna get quotes for that, or?
that's what I want to ask the commission. If I can go ahead and get quotes.
Yes, please get quotes to take down the
What's-
dead tree.
What's the address for this?
So it's Cummings Court. So I got on the picture, on your way out of town, before you get to West Street, there's a road to the right. It's called Cummings Court. You can see the highlighted area. on the-
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm familiar. It's that street that ends because the water's in the way.
That's right. It's a dead end.
So I know
Um,
I'm 300 feet, but I'm one property removed from that. There's a ton of dead trees in that land, like a ton. I don't know if a microburst went through there or something.
It did.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Good
Like
years
there's a
ago.
ton.
But this is the, I'll speed it up a little bit. So this is the tree here.
Okay.
And
Okay, but why are we getting a quote for a dead tree? I'm just confused.
it's on our
by that.
property.
We own the conservation.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 10 acres off of Cummings Court. That highlighted area I showed was our conservation land.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so this is leaning onto another piece of property?
Yeah, it's stretching over. And then that's their house, and she's afraid it's dead and choked out, and she'd like to have that removed.
Okay.
I'm getting a little dizzy on that.
Sorry.
Swirly around. I would say.
Okay,
get
that was great.
quotes.
What is the request? Do they want to take down one tree?
Well, they want us to take down that tree, one tree. And so,
So we need to approve you going out to get a quote for the tree removal.
yeah, I like, yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds reasonable enough.
Are you gonna make the motion, Art?
Yeah, I'll say that we approve for the conservation agent to go out and seek a quote for the removal of a single tree on Cummings Court that overhangs a adjacent piece of property.
Thank you, Art.
Okay, motion's been made.
Seconded.
Seconded. All those in favor, roll call, please.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mangum, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve.
Welcome.
You need anything else?
That's it.
We're at it.
I drank.
I'll let friggin' leave.
Okay, board will get the minutes ready for next meeting,
See you guys Saturday.
and we'll see everybody Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a bunch of minutes. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay,
Where in Orange Street is that?
yes.
It's
116 Orange,
116.
right before the state.
it's across from a log cabin on the right as you get to the town line.
He's gonna put some flags up, right? Just put it in 114 and you'll get there.
Okay. I'll make a
I'll
motion.
entertain a motion
Second,
to adjourn. Who made the motion? Who made the,
Art made
motion.
Art made the motion.
okay, and Mark seconded. All those in favor, roll call, please.
Art Montmany, aye.
KG Dudley, aye.
Mike Greco, aye.
Mark Mangum, aye.
Eric Harris, aye.
Okay,